Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV for the second time today. Brilliant racing earlier in the Vermilion X Coaching Rookie Series, and now we move to the main game of the Aussie sim racing community, one of the main games at least, V8SCOPS, round 9 for the 2024 season from Road America here in virtual Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. We got Split 2 and Split 1 commentary on the cards here tonight. Some fantastic racing around a classic American road racing circuit that the drivers chose. This is the driver's choice round, and Road America's absence was notable from this season's calendar when it was initially announced. Good to see that it's here. To bring it to you all live here on SimSpeed TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Kick, whichever platform you come from. Hello, I'm Reese Gardner with Dean Hunt alongside me in the comms box for Split 2 action. We're going to be joined for Split 1 by the legend Jake Sperry. Well, Dean, Road America, last night's racing certainly went off. We really enjoyed the V8SCOPS supports runnings. Now it's time to get into the main game here in virtual Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was some fantastic racing last night for both categories, but particularly in the V8s, we saw some really hot battles, some aggressive driving, and it basically ticked every box and some drama at the end. So I hope we weren't too spoiled last night, and looking to maybe repeat at least half as good as what it was last night will be pretty awesome still. So really looking forward to this one.
As am I. Road America needs very little introduction for those of you familiar with it. It's what I like to call America's Monza. It's a historic circuit that has the exact same layout it opened with in 1955. Long straights, heavy braking zones. It is a classic in the V8s on iRacing, and for very good reason. We see some magnificent battles around this place, particularly coming down to turn 5 on the first lap, Dean.
Yeah, and we saw last night as well, it did create some dramas with the downhill braking zone. It's quite difficult to get the car pulled up there, but like you say, Reese, it's a golden opportunity to overtake. If you can set your run up through turn 1 and turn 3, all the way down that long straight, you've got a downhill braking zone. If you can get to the inside of the car in front of you, you've got a pretty good chance to get it done. But yeah, like I said, we saw a few mistakes last night, some compression lockups, even a few blown engines. So look for maybe something along those lines too. So it's risk versus reward there.
Yeah, very much risk versus reward. The carousel and the kink, two of the key corners on this circuit, and the drivers will be wanting to look after their left side tyres here, the majority of the corners at this place being right-handers. And we do have pit stops on the cards, at least for Split 1 as well. It's the standard 200k round format for this one as well. But we'll move to Split 2 to start things off, and it is the usual Split 2 action. It is a simple 17-lap race with a 60% fuel tank restriction and one compulsory pit stop. 50-minute time limit as well, so if there's a couple of safety cars, then we could be looking at going time certain. But he is hoping that that doesn't happen, so that we can get this race sorted very quickly and enjoy the action as it comes.
Yeah, and I'm sure the drivers want to do that as well. I think with a 17 lapper, of course, the 60% fuel restriction means that, of course, have to stop for a CPS, but they probably need to take a bit of a splash of fuel as well. So safety car early on will throw a bit of a spanner into works into some of the pre-planned strategy that we might see. But I think for the most part, they've got a fair bit of runoff here at Road America. So not often we see a heap of safety cars, but, anything can happen. It's V8 racing. There's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, indeed. Plenty to go wrong, indeed. We'll be waiting for the final standings from practice very soon. The drivers are in practice at the moment, and Damien Cairns is the one on top in the practice session at the moment, 3/10 clear of Chris Ireland. It's a bit of a smaller field for Split 2 this time around, but the racing should still be good. And looking at the conditions out there on the track, it's looking nice and cool as well. 23 degrees Celsius track temperature, only 22 degrees Celsius in the air. We are nicely in the morning here at Virtual Road America, as we follow around the Vermilion Esports car down the front stretch here into turn 1 for Lewis Greathead, who at the moment is sitting in the midfield in the practice session times with under 8 minutes left. Those are the standings as they are at the moment, and it'll be interesting to fight for the top 3 for sure, Dean, because remember, the top 3 get their golden ticket to start in Split 1 later on tonight.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say probably most of the drivers in the field are targeting, is trying to get into that main split and enjoy a fight with the big dogs, even if it's from sort of the tail end of that, of course. The Split 2's already had their qualifying sorted, but Split 1 still need to do their qualifying on the night. So just because you've made it into Split 1 doesn't mean you'll be at the back if you're being promoted. You could still get a good quali lap in, maybe surprise a few folks and work your way up through the pack. So definitely the top 3 spots are, like you said, the golden ticket. That's the one that probably all the drivers want to get tonight. So good to see them scrapping over that podium.
Yeah, certainly will. Having a look at Chris Ireland at the moment in the DPR Racing Mustang, practicing a pit entry. Road America's pit entry, a lot more difficult than it looks. Seems like a straight run up the hill into pit lane, but the limiter line comes up out of nowhere, and you have to practice that pit entry if you want to get the race done right. Road America's pit speed limit is also quite low speed, and the pit lane is incredibly long. It's one of the longest pit lanes on iRacing. So the delta, the transit time in pit lane is massive here. So it really matters when you decide to take your pit stop.
Definitely, and if the supports category from last night's anything go off, a long or shorter pit stop can really jumble things up and sort of. It took us by surprise, some of the stop lengths, and I think a couple of guys jumped a few spots to improve their position just from saving a bit of fuel and spending less time in the lane. But it is such a long transit time. You've really got to be careful of where you come out in traffic. Like if you're leading the race and you box, you've got to be careful you're not coming out into the sort of mid or end of the pack and losing time doing that way. So many different options, a few ways to skin a cat here, and tyre life's going to be major, especially around a corner like this. The carousel really eats the left tyres for breakfast. It is morning here at Road America, so eating the left tyres for breakfast, and then the kink as well. huge part of the track to really overheat your tyres, and you've got to really make sure you look after them, Reece, to give you the best sort of chance at being able to choose when you stop.
Yeah, the track's going to probably be putting some of that nice Wisconsin cheese on those tyres as well to enjoy for a solid brekkie. Tim Mulford making his way to the end of the lap now through Bill Mitchell Bend, the fast left-hander going up the hill. Used to be a bridge over that corner, but with renovations that the track underwent some years ago, now there's an underpass there to allow teams and spectators access to the paddock and the inside of the circuit. Up the hill to the start-finish line. We'll see if this is an improvement from Mulford. He's currently 4/10 off the fastest time, and wow, that was a very high predicted lap there. If you're taking 12 hours to do a lap around Road America, you probably had a few pints.
Yeah, I don't think you're doing something anywhere near being right there, but yeah, Road America, just one of those tracks that obviously the drivers voted this one in, and it's pretty much a favourite. I don't think I've spoke to anyone who doesn't like it, so fantastic to see that. But of course, yeah, looking at a couple minute lap times here and there, but I think try and keep them to maybe single digits in the minutes, maybe.
Yeah, ideally. Road America, in terms of lap time, is comparable to Mount Panorama, and I'd say it's comparable in length as well. It's actually about 200 meters, 230 meters longer than Bathurst, and you end up negotiating it in about the same amount of time, 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Currently the top time in Split 2. We'll be expecting times in the low 205s at least in Split 1 when we get to qualifying, but it all depends on the track conditions, of course. Split 2, of course, being run earlier on in the day. There's confirmation of the conditions out here. Very low winds, so I think the drivers won't be suffering too much aero disturbance through the fastest corners around here. But you see those kinds of numbers in terms of temperature. A track temperature in the low 20s is pretty much perfect if you're wanting optimum grip from the tyres.
Yeah, big time. I think normally it does get quite hot at Road America, I think, and we said that last night as well in the supports. But yeah, the admins have looked down favourably on this event and said you guys can have a cooler track today. So that's really nice of them to do that and control the weather for the guys. But getting a look at Robert Christo here in the Frog Leap Juice Racing Holden Commodore. He's abandoning this lap, but as it stands at the moment for pre-qualifying, he's sitting in that second position on the grid. So he'll be looking to grab that sort of top 3 spot with both hands and hold on to it for dear life as much as he can. He was talking about how excited he was earlier in the week in the Discord, and looking to see what he can get a result tonight.
Yeah, it'll be the same for Bruce Tannock here in car 123. He's been a regular Split 2 competitor over the course of this season and has tried his best to get the results befitting of his pace. He's had some issues, though. Maybe Road America will smile on him this round. Through the final corner, he comes a little bit wide of the apex there. Not the end of the world. It'll turn that into an opportunity to practice a pit stop. Remember, drivers will have to complete at least one pit stop over the course of this race, but if you're visiting the pits more than once, then you've got more things to worry about than just your result.
Big time. And now we're on board with David Coleman as well, which we note that he's currently 3rd in the practice, but he's the slowest pre-qualifying time. So look to see him maybe showing a bit more pace. Perhaps he didn't have the time to practice during the week and get a good pre-qualifying time together. But yeah, David Coleman now, he's 4th now. He's just been jumped by Josh Huttons. But yeah, look to see, he's getting a bit slidey there. Whee, look at the drift skills.
Woo!
That's
nice.
Very well done. I think he knows he's on the broadcast maybe at the moment. That was fantastic stuff. But yeah, get a load of that. That's very impressive.
Yeah, you won't be wanting to do too much of that in the race, though. The tyres will overheat massively in a part of the circuit where you really need those tyres to not be too hot. In any case, last minute of the practice session now before we get ready for this 17-lap race. The grid has been set by pre-qualifying times. 3 days of pre-qualifying over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we'll see now an exterior view of that magnificent little drift that David Coleman put on for us. Would have been nice if he could hold it all the way through the turn there, but I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I'll give that about 8.8 out of 10, I reckon. If you could hold it all the way, it's definitely a 10, but that'll be a good shot for Bowler Media to get a hold of and post on the social. That's a fantastic one, but yeah, big impressive car control. And here's Steve Vella taking the more conventional line through the carousel. There's a couple of ways you can go about it. We spoke about it again last night. You can sort of hug the inside if you want, or you can sort of double apex it as well. There's a couple of ways you can go about it. So, and to set up a move into Canada potentially on your rival in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to see all of that put into practice very shortly as we are in the race session now and we get ready to go through this grid. We have a solid field in split 2 of 17 cars racing here, and they're going to be headed up by Connor Nixon and Rob Crisdale. Excellent front row there. Vermilion and Frogleap Juiced Racing starting on... sorry, Connor Nixon's part of Drop Bear now. My apologies. Got that mixed up. That's the Gardner Gaff out of the way. That's your front row. Christopher Ireland is going to start the DPR Racing Mustang alongside Banter Alliance's Andrew Ritchie. Then, rounding out the top 6, Vincent Skilbeck starting in the top 5 alongside Tim Mulford. We have Lewis Greathead starting in 7th place. Damien Cairns will complete the 4th row for Accelerate Sim Racing. And our top 10 will be rounded out by Stephen Banks and Bruce Tannock.
Yeah, the top 10 looking pretty strong. We got Benjamin Smith starting from P11 in that Race on Oz Mustang. Blake Fitzpatrick in Pacific Esports Racing taking out P12. Scott McKenzie for Phase 4 Motorsport taking out P13. And Joshua Horton, I pronounced his name wrong last weekend. I'll try not to get it wrong this time, in P14 for Vermilion Motorsports in that Commodore. Steve Vella, P15 with Dean Reddit, P16 from Right Sim Racing. Also mentioning Sim Racing in Focus, a nice little article he does. David Coleman for Fishy Motorsports in P17, and Dan Stevens driving the safety car in the Proven Energy Porsche Mission R. We have to see that.
Indeed. Yes, well, we'll be hoping that we don't see him out there too often tonight. He can have a nice chill night sitting there waiting for the opportunity. Well then, we're about to get things going here as the field gets ready to go away. They're not going to have as much of a problem as they will in split 1 of cars at the rear of the field starting going uphill. But here we go. Get ready for the race start here for split 2 in V8SCOPS round 9 at Road America. Revs rising, and we are away. Bit of a better jump there. Better reaction from Rob Crisdale. He is going to draw alongside Connor Nixon and probably be ahead by the time they get to the turn 1 braking zone. Nixon didn't quite nail that start. He's under pressure from Ireland as well. Side by side between Skilbeck and Ritchie as they make their way into turn 1. And it looks like Nixon's going to defend the lead from Crisdale coming out of the first turn. Now Ireland has a chance to sneak up into second here at turn 3, but he's ginger on the brakes. Doesn't want to run into the Frogleap Juiced 808. And there we go. No, dear, oh dear. Damien Cairns falling down the order there. Accelerate Sim Racing Commodore spinning off the circuit, but doing a nice 360 to get things going again. Ireland has made his way past Crisdale, but Crisdale's going to try and find a way back here at turn 5 as they're all fanning out behind, trying to get every position they can on the opening lap. Tannock goes for a huge slide there on the exit of the corner, and he's going to drop like a stone.
Yeah, big time. Not the ideal race start for a few guys, and Crisdale, well, he got that launch off the line but had nowhere to go with it, of course, being on the outside. And now Christopher Ireland's just eating for breakfast like a piece of cheese, as we're saying, but he's got it back now. Oh, no, he doesn't, sorry. Yeah, dropped down to P3 already, which, of course, still the golden ticket. But side-by-side in the carousel here for Ritchie and Mulford. Mulford on the outside. Very difficult to hold that line on the outside. He's done a pretty good job of it, but he relinquishes that position for now. And you've got to be really careful you don't overheat those outside tyres on the outside of the carousel.
Crisdale's wide in the kink. He's clipped the wall there. wing mirror a little bit dented now, and he's going to drop positions now as well. Crisdale not having a very good first lap here, falling behind Benjamin Smith, down into 7th spot, and now it's Skilbeck's turn to run deep at Canada Corner as Crisdale runs wide again. Oh, and Crisdale's clipped one of the Mustangs there. Looks like that's Scott McKenzie that's gone for a spin.
Oh, that's not ideal. They're all tripping over each other there. Crisdale just gone from bad to worse. He'll probably cop a penalty for that rejoin, I would imagine. But man, that's really disappointing. He went wide at the kink and then went deep at the Canada Corner and then collected McKenzie on the way through. So not an ideal start, of course, and he's dropped all the way down the auto and probably even further once he gets maybe a penalty for that rejoin.
Yeah, that's a shame there for Rob Crisdale. He started on the front row and now is down in the doldrums, down in 12th position, looking for a pass from Blake Fitzpatrick here on him. Looks like the incident between Crisdale and McKenzie is under review for the time being, so this might not be the end of Crisdale's bad night here. Only lap 2, and things have changed immensely in the face of this race. Christopher Ireland is pressuring Connor Nixon for the lead of the race, and they are a long way ahead of Andrew Ritchie, who gets a very interesting pack behind him here for 3rd spot as, oh dear, Skilbeck making another mistake down at turn 5, gets it back going again. But we have the 2 Mustangs up the front of the field getting ready to give us a good show.
Yeah, and we know that Connor Nixon's very solid in these V8 supercars. He knows how to pilot them and manage the tyres and do all the right things. We've seen him have some pretty good results in the past. But yeah, Chris Ireland, I wonder what he's thinking at the moment. If he might just, chill out a little bit, relax. Probably quite happy to sit in that P2 for now. Maybe look at making a move a little bit later into the race. But he does look like he's got some pace on Nixon. So we'll see what happens moving forward with that. Of course, the undercut is available at this circuit, but you do lose the draft, and the draft is huge at this track because of the long straights. But here's that Crisdale incident, Reese.
Yeah, just a bit too deep into the kink, clipped the grass on the outside of the corner, and then he just dropped down the field. And ultimately, coming into Canada Corner, trying to get back up to speed, he had another issue, just a lock up of the tyres, maybe distracted by Skilbeck running wide, and then back onto the circuit just in time for Scott McKenzie to arrive on the scene. Probably a mitigating factor in that incident, and that McKenzie was already too wide with another car, so maybe that will count in Crisdale's favour.
Yeah, I think he's already been given the drive-through though, Reece. I didn't see that pop up at the bottom. I could be wrong though. But for I'm correct. So for once, just being told. So he'd get the drive-through, but you got to feel for McKenzie as well. Just copping. Yeah, he had nowhere to go. He's too wide. Just caught that little contact on the rear end and put him straight into the fence. That Thunder Valley's not a good spot to do it. We've seen a move being made here. Oh! Contact! Huge
Andrew Ritchie, my God, spinning across the racetrack. Everyone's going to have to avoid the debris and the stricken Banter Alliance Commodore there. I think we might see a safety car out of that as Tim Mulford, and it looks like Stephen Banks also having trouble as Bruce Tannock finds his way into the wall as well. This race has just erupted into chaos.
It's become a demolition derby. That was a huge bit of contact, and I'm not sure what caused that exactly coming down into turn 4, but it was a massive hit into the fence, and then completely separate incident was Tannock getting caught up. And I think Stephen Banks might have ran into the back of him and just fenced him. So they're all tripping over each other as well. I think the safety car might be coming out momentarily. I would be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah, and that means Josh Horton will be glad that he's found his way back past Benjamin Smith, who had a massive run on him there through the carousel. We will see then when, race control's called the safety car, so there won't be any opportunity there for Smith to fight back on Horton. I've just gone back to see what caused that incident, and, Tim Mulford, I think, is going to get a hefty penalty from race control because he was racing Ritchie hard for 3rd, and, you'll see it happen here on the replay thanks to our friends at Suit Speed. Mulford moving across there, and then he moves back across, but there's overlap that he had on Ritchie, so there wasn't space for that move to be done. Ritchie basically pit maneuvered out of third spot, and then Tanek's issues started here. He just lost it on... No, he didn't lose it on the curb. He ran right into the back of Mulford as Mulford was trying to recover there. That's bizarre, but the safety car has resulted in everyone in the field coming in for their compulsory pit stop here. Makes sense. This is the best time to get it done. The pit window opened at the end of lap 2, but there was talk beforehand that the drivers would be pitting from lap 4 to get it home. The safety cars come out at exactly the right time for everyone who hasn't been involved in one of those incidents.
Yeah, big time. And you have to sort of wonder what was sort of going on there with the follow-up incident between Ritchie and Tanek, but I wonder, yeah, just the rejoin as well afterwards on the outside of turn 4 might be looked at as well, but I feel like there could have been more done to avoid the incident. But nevertheless, safety cars come out, the guys have all jumped in the pit lane to serve their compulsory stops, get a bit of fuel in, and yeah, hopefully they can get to the end without another stop. We did say, yeah, the critical lap was lap 4, but as it stands, Connor Nixon, Chris Ireland keeping their noses clean out the front and letting all the chaos ensue behind them. But of course, the field all bunched up now. I would imagine that Lewis Greathead's got something to say. He's currently got the fastest lap, so I'm not sure how much that's going to affect anything, if that's showing a bit more of his true pace, but he'll definitely be wanting to say, I want to have a look at the next step up on the podium.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I tell you what, Benjamin Smith is going to be harassing the back of Lewis Greathead for third place now. We saw that Smith and Horton were battling over their position when the safety car came out, and Horton has not had a good run through pit lane. His pit stop is pretty much on the money for what we were expecting, 9.7 seconds, but a 44-second lane time. You compare that to everyone else who's been in like the mid 40-second range for pit stop transit. So not too sure exactly what's going on there for Josh Horton, but not ideal for him, down to a 7th spot, but still up 7 places from where he started. Meanwhile, here's the onboard view from Tim Mulford with Andrew Ritchie ahead of him. Had a run and I think was trying to switch to the inside for turn 5, but then thought better of it, realized there wasn't room, but it was too late to move back across at that point. Yeah,
it's a tricky one. There's locking up into the corner as well, so it's just a series of unfortunate events. Everyone's sort of trying to avoid it. Whack from the back there as well. I feel like the trailing car could have done more to avoid that, but I don't like to be critical like that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
maybe Tanek was expecting Mulford to stay off the racetrack there, and yeah, probably didn't react in time to that. But race control is also reviewing that contact between them as potential for Mulford to be pinged for an unsafe re-entry, in addition to turning Andrew Ritchie around. But regardless, we've got a little bit longer here behind the safety car now to negotiate, and no surprise to see that pretty much the whole field is clutching wherever they possibly can. They're bringing the engines back down to idle for as long as they possibly can manage, just to save a bit of fuel. Lap 4 is the critical lap, but they will have to save a little bit from here on out if they want to make it to the end. And clutching under safety car is the way to do it.
Yeah, and not a lot of cars in iRacing allow you to do that anymore, but of course the V8 supercars have got the dog box, so you need to either blip or clutch on the way down, but you can keep it flat on the way up the gears. So yeah, it's still got that left pedal there to give you a bit of idle time. Because of course here at Road America, you got some up and down hill parts as well, so you can really just sort of coast down the hills at some certain spots and save quite a bit more than what you normally might at a flatter track, like say for example Sebring, or coming up the hill at Bathurst. You come back down the hill, you can clutch on the way down, so something to keep in mind. But of course the fuel strategies here definitely probably still need to save to get to the end without another stop.
Yeah, so there was another incident in amongst all of that we haven't seen yet. I saw the race control message. There was an incident under investigation between Steve Vella and Blake Fitzpatrick. So we'll get a view of that now. The incident happened ahead of them. Fitzpatrick behind Steve Vella here coming into turn 5. Vella goes tight, runs deep, a little wide on the exit, and then a little bit squeezed there, and well, Vella gets turned, and that turns around Stephen Banks as well, who is okay. Fitzpatrick gets back going, and looks like, yeah, it doesn't look like anyone else was involved in the rejoin there for Banks, but regardless, another messy incident to happen on that lap.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you get a bit caught up worrying about everyone spinning off around you and trying to avoid that, and you get caught up in something else. So that's a really tricky one. Maybe didn't realise there was some overlap, or thought he had a bit more room. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's another unfortunate incident. And we've seen Andrew Ritchie and Bruce Tannock, of course, still in the pit lane, so I think they're done for tonight. And then Scott McKenzie way far back, trying to catch up to the back of the grid to get his night back on track again. But I wonder if he can get to the back of the safety car field before the end of this lap. We'll have to find out. But for the most part, top 14 and down are all in the part of this safety car queue, so they're all still on track to have a reasonable finish.
Yeah, indeed. They're all coming down the back straight at the moment. McKenzie's just made his way out of turn 5, so I don't think he's going to be able to catch them back up by the time we get back going. The safety car is coming in. The Porsche Mission R, sponsored by Proven Energy, back in the pit lane, and we'll get ready to go back to green flag racing. Plenty of drivers saving a bunch of fuel onto that safety car. Hopefully they'll be able to get to the end without another pit stop. But Connor Nixon, he was facing a lot of pressure from Chris Ireland when the safety car came out, and we're going to be continuing further into that storyline when the power gets put down to the tarmac. Good position gains from Lewis Greyhead and Benjamin Smith, up 4 and 7 positions respectively, but David Coleman has made his way furthest up the field from the very back, up 12 positions to the top 5. And look at this, they're struggling here to get into line as Connor Nixon puts the power down, and we are back to green flag racing here at Road America. Nixon holding strong. It was a good getaway, but Ireland is going to be right on top of him. And keep an eye out for the JTI Team Race on Oz Mustanger, Benjamin Smith. He's going to be pressuring the back of Lewis Greyhead here, who you would argue is a bit out of position.
Yeah, and you're saying that Smith was hungry for it. Look to see what he just did at turn 1 there. Show the nose to Greyhead in front. Make him think that, I'm not safe here. Benjamin Smith just needs to show a bit of aggression early on while the field's all bunched up, and try and get a move done on Lewis Greyhead as soon as possible. And Greyhead's just got to try and stay on the back of Ireland and not be too risky. He's defensive into turn 4. Cutting the grass there a bit is Smith, but I think that's pretty safe for no slowdowns. And we saw some drama with a slowdown last night, so keep an eye out for any of those again. But for the most part now, they're line astern and they're keeping it pretty tame.
Yeah, looks like they are. Andrew Ritchie and Bruce Tannock not going to re-emerge back onto the racetrack. They are DNFs, according to race control, thanks to their huge incidents. And now the battle is on for third spot. Nixon and Ireland are starting to skip away from the field, and away we go through the carousel. Smith is going to try and pick up the slipstream here. He's got to worry about Coleman as well. This battle for third, fourth and fifth all together on racetrack at the moment through the kink. And they all nail the exit curb nicely. And Benjamin Smith a bit too far back for a move into Canada corner. He's going to have to spool that one up for at least another half a lap.
Horton right on the back of Tim Mulford as well there, almost touching front to rear. He's the two Commodores, but Horton, he's up he's up 7 spots like you said before, Reece, so he's coming all the way from the back of the field to see what he can create. But I saw Greyhead was a little bit slow through, I think it was after turn 5 and coming up to turn 6 on that previous lap. So look at Ben Smith's all over the back of him. Greyhead defending hard. He's going to give Smith the outside run into turn 1. And meanwhile, a pass for the lead may be on for Chris Ireland. Can't get it done just yet.
Oh, Smith's off the circuit. Benjamin Smith ran deep at the first turn there, and unfortunately off the track now, all the way back down to 9th. He just locked up on the way in there, trying to get past Horton. We get it on the replay instantly, and well, yeah, man, he just pinched the front right there, and there was no recovering the grip of that car. Fortunately, nice big gravel trap there to save you if you run wide.
Yes, but unfortunately he's dropped all the way down to P9, so he's got a mountain to climb back up if he wants that last golden ticket spot. And meanwhile, Lewis Greathead is just breathing a small sigh of relief until about the time when David Coleman starts knocking on his door to say, I want to have a turn, let me get that golden ticket. The gap between those two, pretty small still at the moment, only a couple of tenths in it. You can see visually they're very close on the circuit at the moment, so keeping up for that. Well, Lewis Greathead is probably just going to be driving in his mirrors for the whole time this race, because at the moment Chris Ireland, Connor Nixon driving away with it, even if they're fighting over that P1 spot.
Yeah, those two Mustangs look supreme in terms of pace, but they'll need to be careful. Just saw Ireland running a little wide through the kink there. He's not immune to mistakes. None of the drivers in this field are. So if you're able to take advantage of that, then that'll end up setting the course of your night very nicely. Some close racing coming into Canada Corner here. Rob Crisdale making up a position on Dean Reedett in the 303 car for Riot Sim Racing, and they're both trying to chase down Stephen Banks, who's still out there in 11th spot. Very wide indeed there for Dean Reedett. That's what allowed Banks past him, and then Crisdale saw that happening and was like, okay, I'm going to just file up the inside myself.
Yeah, and Crisdale looking to get his race back on track. He might be a little bit flustered after what happened on the opening proceedings of the race, and we were talking about how he might be one of those drivers to get that golden ticket, but yeah, got a bit of a mountain to climb before he can get back to there. Meanwhile, this battle for third is still on. Greathead, Coleman, Horton, Mulford and Cairns all within sort of reaching distance to take that spot away from Lewis Greathead. And like I said, well, Lewis, he'll be stressing a little bit driving in his mirrors at the moment, because Coleman just getting a little bit closer every lap, showing his nose there. He won't have enough of a run, but that's what you got to do when you're the trailing driver. You got the old mind punt up your sleeve. Maybe just show your nose when it shouldn't be shown, and maybe make the driver in front panic a little bit. Just look how close they're getting now, Reece. He's just edging a little bit closer with each lap.
Yeah, Coleman is dialing up the pressure ever so slightly, lap on lap. And those two up the We apologise for our slight technical issues. We're SimSpeed Radio for the time being until we can get Lyman and Josh Horton, now that he's back into the rhythm, stand a chance to get into the top 3.
Yeah, quick recovery there from super producer Jay Kennedy. And yeah, a few drivers likewise trying to get a quick recovery back on their race. Almost, or about halfway through now actually, as we cross the line. So halfway through already, we've seen so much drama. I think maybe they might have settled down a little bit, but you never really know. But this fight is really on for P3 to get that last chance to get into split 1. And here goes Greathead defending Coleman again, and up front as well, Chris Ireland flashing the lights at Connor Nixon, doing everything they can to try and unsettle the driver in front. It's both Coleman and Ireland. Look out for Josh Horton on the back here as well of Coleman. Oh, almost making contact, Reece.
Yeah, he's very close, isn't he? Horton senses a move here on Coleman, and you saw that Greathead with that defensive line through turn 1 was compromised on the exit. That slowed up Coleman, and that allowed Horton to try and have a go at him as well. But now down at turn 5, this is the next opportunity. Coleman with a little bit of a deeper brake application there, not quite enough to get alongside Greathead, who's putting on a fantastic defensive drive at the moment. Can Coleman file up the inside of turn 6? He forces Greathead to go wide and taps him around, and Coleman's around too. So Josh Horton is into the top 3.
Yep, Horton's gone full Bradbury, picking up the pieces, the figure skaters in front of him, just losing it. But yeah, I wonder, Coleman sort of snuck up on the inside there. I'm not sure if the move is really on, yeah, Horton's just there and saying, "Oh, thanks boys, I'll take that one." And he's now up a whopping 11 positions. So fantastic drive from Josh in that Vermilion Motorsports Commodore. He's doing a great job. Here we go, as a replay. Got the inside here for Coleman. A little bit of overlap. I don't know if it's there, Reese.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a bit of overlap, but the question is, was there enough overlap? Because at the point Coleman was getting alongside, Greathead had already committed to the corner, so I don't think it would be reasonable to expect him to straighten out the steering at that point. It all happened so fast, but I don't know, race control will obviously have their own deductions to make about that incident. They have more angles available than we do. Horton making it up into the top 3, but evidently his rear end is thinking otherwise. That was a big slide on the exit of the final corner, and now Tim Mulford stands a chance of getting into the podium places.
Yeah, he lost a bit of time there. Mulford looking up the inside, then back to the outside. Man, we've got to watch out for that big concrete wall down there against the pit wall, and Horton holds on for now, but I think Mulford is all over the back of him. Look at that, he's weaving and crossing over. Just watch out behind from Cairns as well. Could get caught up in the rear of that Commodore, but he goes. He's got the run. I don't think he has the run, maybe if he's in the draft, but Damien Cairns behind in the perfect view of watching this battle unfold, maybe looking to follow through whoever gets. Oh, look at the run he's got, Reese.
Wow, that's a great run from Damien Cairns, and he has the racing line coming into turn 5. He'll at least get the position over Mulford for a brief moment, but runs wide in the turn, and Mulford transforms that into a run up the inside of Horton coming into turn 6. Horton will try and hold strong around the outside. Slight tap of the door handles between the 80 and the 85, and Horton will keep the inside line coming through Hurry Downs, and this has compressed the entire pack for 3rd place. Now Cairns is slightly ahead of Mulford. Benjamin Smith right in this as well, with Blake Fitzpatrick. Vincent Skilbeck at the rear of the train with Stephen Banks and Rob Crisdale, all looking to grab a piece of the pie.
That's some fantastic racing, but we've seen it time and time again. A small mistake at the front can trip over everyone else, and Damien Cairns had a massive run there to take that P4 from Tim Mulford, but almost looked like he didn't really have anywhere to go with it. But Mulford watching on from behind and still...
just got tapped a little bit there behind by Benjamin Smith. Mulford was trying to block him on the run down to Canada Corner, and there's no room for him to make the move there. Wide for the Pacific Esports Racing Commodore of Blake Fitzpatrick, side by side with Skilbeck now through Bill Mitchell Bend. Skilbeck gets tapped off the circuit, and he'll have to yield the position from there.
Wow, Reese, I reckon that was the same noise that he made in the driver's seat as well, getting a bit squirrely on the way. And here's a replay. Yeah, moving over and blocking a little bit. I don't know if it's maybe a little bit late, but that's all. I think Rubbin's racing sometimes, and these touring cars can really take a beating.
Yeah, they certainly can, but they don't do too well with head-on contact to the wall as Cairns runs deep in turn 1. That'll give another chance for Mulford to get alongside. If I was Benjamin Smith at this point, I'd just sit back and watch, because it seems like the way Mulford's... Whoa! Skillback! My goodness! Big slide coming out of turn 3 there. Lost the rear end on the way in, but recovered. Nicely done indeed. But the way Mulford's weaving around and being as aggressive as he is at the moment, I wouldn't want to be near this battle. I would wait for Mulford and Cairns to potentially come together, because my brain's telling me it looks like that's what's going to happen.
Definitely, I agree. And here's Skilbeck's on board with the big slide.
Caught the grass.
Nice bit of opposite lock to catch it again. Yeah, caught the grass. Yeah, not ideal. Not as much grip, of course, as the tarmac. But as I was saying, for Ben Smith watching on. Mulford just sort of weaving and diving across the track. If you get too close, sometimes what Mulford's doing is going to burn his tyres up and lessen his chances later on to make a move.
Well, race control has decided that the incident between Mulford and Ritchie is worthy of a post-race investigation. That's not ideal for them at fifth now, and pressuring the back of Damien Cairns, who once again runs deep on the exit of the final corner. And now Smith will have the run. He's going to be on the outside coming into the first corner. Not the worst place to be, and he might have just enough of a nose ahead that he can push the issue coming into turn one. Mulford struggling to find a way past. There's just not enough space to stake his claim here. Cairns will defend again into turn one, but the over-under from Benjamin Smith. Excellent stuff. That's how you get it done. And Smith will be up the inside into turn three now. Gets a little tap from behind from Mulford, but Benjamin Smith in the 91 is finally through into fourth place.
Yeah, and Damien Cairns. Contact! How did they hold on to that?
Oh, love that. Mulford and Blake Fitzpatrick both struggling in the midst of this very close pack. And Rob Crisdale trying to go through the middle of the Pacific Esports cars, ultimately unsuccessful. It's going to bring Skillbeck right back into it again, but Skillbeck can't find a way up the inside of sixth. This race is crazy.
They're all just sort of boxing each other out. It's almost like what you see in the oval NASCAR, where they're just sort of running and they get a good run, but then they've got nowhere to go because the cars in front of them are too wide. So fantastic stuff from all the drivers there to keep all four wheels on the circuit. But man, that was some hectic stuff. But yeah, at the moment, Horton is taking that last golden ticket spot and sort of pulling away from this pack now because of that. And meanwhile, Connor Nixon and Chris Ireland also just driving away with it because they're keeping their noses clean. But I'd imagine for these guys in the mid-pack fighting over this sort of fourth position, it's a lot of fun.
New leader, meanwhile, Chris Ireland getting it done on Connor Nixon at Canada Corner. That move was threatened for quite some time, and when we cross the line, we'll have 5 laps to go in split 2. Well-executed move by Chris Ireland. That's going to conclude the battle for the time being. Just a really good run down the back straight through the kink, and Nixon looks like he sensed him coming but left the door open on the inside. Nixon's coming back on live pictures. Meanwhile, he's going to try into turn one and have up the inside of turn one, and the lead returns to the hands of the Drop Bear Motorsport 168.
Yeah, they're all just exchanging here. So it's not only on for P4 like young and old, but yeah, definitely the fight for the win is on too. But got to be really careful. We saw last night the two leaders make contact, and one of them ended up in the fence, and they were teammates, of course. But obviously, you want the race win, but you got to be really careful not to cause any issues and lose that podium spot and your chance to get a run in split one, which I'm sure both Nixon and Ireland are thinking about that, but sort of weighing it up. Do I want to win more? Do I want to risk a bit more? You sometimes get a bit caught up in the moment as a driver if you don't have anyone in your sort of virtual pit box telling you maybe calm down a bit. Here's Mulford, I think, getting Cairns around the outside, which was impressive. I saw that while the lead was getting changed, so it's happening all up and down the field, but got the run on him out of Canada, and then Stephen Banks copped a bit of contact from Cairns and almost came back on the circuit to collect him again, but wow, that was some impressive stuff around the outside for Mulford.
Yeah, took great advantage of the error for Damien Cairns on the exit of Canada Corner. Well then, honestly, there's been so many position changes here, I don't even know where to begin telling the story of this race. The only real simple story that we have is this lead battle between Connor Nixon and Christopher Ireland, the Centrelink emblazoned Ford Mustang, trying his best to get back into the lead of the race here. It's been a while since we've seen a DPR car up the very front of a field, and it's looking like a good battle battle all the way to the end. 4 laps to go up the front here, and right in the slipstream is Chris Ireland. He'll be lining up another move on Nixon shortly, sure enough.
Yeah, big time. And another thing to take into account is the timing of when you can sort of push and get your run on the guy in front. I see on the lap times that Ireland lost about 4/10 in terms of lap time on Nixon that lap because of the switching and swerving around. But at the moment, I think the best chance for Chris Ireland is to get close down the main straight, get a good exit out of turn 1 and turn 2, and set up a run right here down at turn 4. Of course, that little kink there is turn 3. But yeah, look to see Ireland. I don't think he's going to not go for the win here, because they've already been swapping positions quite a bit. So what I was saying earlier about being careful and not losing that top 3 spot, I don't know if Chris Ireland cares as much as I think he might.
Yeah, we'll have to see, as Damien Cairns and Tim Mulford are still fighting over 5th place, and Stephen Banks and Blake Fitzpatrick, the duo from Pacific Esports Racing, right there to take advantage if they come together. Mulford gets it done again on Damien Cairns. Good stuff there, as we saw news of Steve Vella getting a stop-and-go penalty from race control for that unsafe rejoin with the 077 of Stephen Banks. And, well, now the drama continues through the carousel. Damien Cairns now down another position, with Banks finding his way through. David Coleman getting a license point penalty for contact with Lewis Greathead. That was the incident that really kicked everything off there after the safety car came out. So, yeah. Race control evidently deciding, nope, that is not on. Cairns deep again in Canada Corner. It seems like one of his favourite places is the runoff area at the exit of that crucial corner on this circuit, and Skilbeck will get it done on Crisdale in the interim.
Yeah, he lost about 3 spots from going deep there, so that's disappointing. He said it's his favourite spot. I'd argue it's probably his least favourite spot, spending a fair bit of time out there with the Canadians, as you said, last night with their beer bottles and whatnot. But, yeah, licence point penalty, of course, for David Coleman's probably going to sting a little bit, but at least for the race, he's not being penalised any more than what he already has been. Of course, very far back from the field now, but I saw as well on the approach to Canada Corner there with that sort of battle pack with Skilbeck, Fitzpatrick, and Cairns. Crisdale and I think it was Skilbeck as well. Both had to get on the brakes on the straightaway because they just had to run on the guys in front with nowhere to go. So that's a bit rough. And meanwhile, drive-through has been issued for Cairns with an iRacing incident limit penalty. So nothing that race control are doing there, but just too many incident points.
Yeah, Damien Cairns running off track one too many times there, as it's side by side between Banks and Mulford. Tim's going to try and squeeze Stephen as much as he can here. Outside line has worked for Mulford in the past, but Banks is with enough overlap that he can get that done and move up into 5th. There's 5 cars involved, 6 cars, involved in this battle for 5th. It's basically the second half of the top 10 you're looking at the moment. This is such an interesting fight, and who will end up getting it done by the end? Mulford with a slightly better run through the mid-corner there in the carousel, and Banks might be in trouble when they come up to Canada.
Yep, Banks had a bit of an opposite lock moment there. He had to save it, and I'm not sure, but Mulford might have either almost or made a very slight contact with the back of that car in front. But Mulford's flashing his lights like mad. He's really wearing out that button on his steering wheel. Gives him a tiny little nudge out of the corner, but I think he's trying to tell Stephen that, hey man, I'm faster than you. Can you please get out of my way? I want to get my race moving. But if I'm Stephen Banks, this is for P5. Tim, you're going to have to earn it off me if I'm Stephen Banks, I reckon.
Yeah, I think the problem for Mulford is, he's clearly fast. He's clearly got the pace to be finishing on the podium here, but his consistency is lacking a little bit at the moment, and maybe he's getting a little flustered in the midst of all of these battles as well. He's going to be in trouble here with Skilbeck now trying, but Mulford will move across to keep him behind, as now it's Blake Fitzpatrick's turn to get a pass on the Commodore there. Easy does it, coming into turn 3. A little bit wide there for Fitzpatrick, and Mulford's going to sweep straight back through, but this time he might be dragging Skillbeck and Crisdale with him.
Yeah, he was doing a really good job there, was Fitzpatrick, to get the initial overlap on the main straight and keep himself alongside through turn 2 and 3, but 1 and 2, sorry, but just...
Oh! Dearie me! So that's a coming together there between Skillbeck and Fitzpatrick there in turn 5. All of those cars coming into the corner at the same time. Some of them were bound to make contact. That's worked out well for Dean Reedett. He ended up gaining 3 free spots out of that. He's passed Crisdale as well. Horton is all on his own at the moment. Well, not quite. Benjamin Smith starting to catch up to him here. Smith was the fastest car on track last time by a 206.8 versus a 207.1 for Horton. So let's see if there's a change for that final spot on the podium and the final of the spots that can make their way through to split 1 later on. We're only going to have 1 lap to go in just a few moments' time. Nixon still holding on to the win versus Christopher Ireland as Benjamin Smith has a little slide on the way through Canada corner. And, oh dear, race control ordering a redress with Blake Fitzpatrick for blocking. Yeah, Mulford was very aggressive with his weaving all throughout the race, and I think he was bound to have an incident somewhere where race control would ping him for it.
Yeah, however, Blake Fitzpatrick has been given a drive-through from iRacing as well for another incident limit ping penalisation, but that's disappointing because you get that position back, but of course, he still has to serve that drive-through, so not a good finishing result for him once he served that one.
All right, let's see then how these positions work out as Crisdale will try to get back into 7th spot here. He and Dean Reedett, not the first time they've been seen together on track, and they'll both be driving as hard as they like on their way around the final 6.4 kilometre run around Road America. Nixon versus Ireland for the lead. Ireland still harassing the back of the 168, but he's wide through turn 6, and that's a crucial opportunity there for Ireland gone. Now he's going to have to depend on a mistake from Nixon or making up some big time through the carousel and the kink for a run at Canada corner. Crisdale, meanwhile, getting past Reedett and up into 7th spot.
Yeah, half-decent recovery there from Crisdale. He got into some strife early on and had to serve that drive-through. And he did start on the front row, but yeah, disappointing even in P7. He did claw through back, but it'll be disappointing for him. But meanwhile, Connor Nixon hasn't seemed to have made any sort of issues come about during the race. And Chris Ireland probably just lost his last chance, as you said, to take that win from him. 8 tenths now the gap, and then Horton behind, 7 seconds behind the leader of Connor Nixon. So I think we're pretty much set for the top 2, and great drive from Nixon and Ireland. Both of them have done a fantastic job to secure their golden ticket.
Yeah, nice, clean, hard battle between these two Mustangs at the front of the field. Exactly what we like to see in V8SCOPS. The split 2 win will go to Connor Nixon for Drop Bear Motorsports, and he will be ecstatic with that performance. Shout out to Chris Ireland as well, pressured Nixon all the way to the end, and Joshua Horton up 11 positions to finish in the top 3. He survived the chaos, and he will make bank from it.
Yeah, Horton, definitely the Imaginary Driver of the Day award goes to him for mine, and it's a fantastic effort from him. Mulford taking out P6 in the meantime across the line there, but it's our race winner, Connor Nixon. I reckon we're going to be treated to some licorice straps on the road here, some fantastic work from him. Of course, if you win, you definitely have to do a donut. I'm not sure if it's written in the rules, but it probably should be. So obviously he had some fuel left as well, so the fuel save wasn't really a concern for him. So yeah, congratulations to Connor Nixon.
Yeah, congratulations indeed. The 168 will come home with victory today in split 2 by only a second over Chris Ireland. And Joshua Horton, big shout out to the Vermilion Motorsports driver there to fight his way through, survive the chaos and get a podium. Benjamin Smith, he had some great drives early on in the race, couldn't quite get it done in the end, but 4th is still a very respectable result from 11th. Stephen Banks getting into the top 5. He'll be happy with that, up 4 places. Tim Mulford, meanwhile, will get 6th place ahead of Rob Crisdale. And Dean Reedett, Vincent Skilbeck, and Lewis Greathead will round out the top 10. And it looks like there's a post-race redress order from for Rob Crisdale. He'll end up finishing behind Skilbeck in the end. Blake Fitzpatrick with a late incident points drive through from 11th place with Damien Cairns, unfortunately not able to get a consistent run going, has to settle for 12th. Mackenzie and Coleman are your last finishers on the lead lap. Steve Vella making it back out there, but we had retirements from Andrew Ritchie and Bruce Tannock, both in the barrier in big ways early on in the race, and I think Ritchie will be very dirty about what happened between himself and Tim Mulford. Meanwhile, we're going to jump into a chat with Connor Nixon, who won the opening race of the night. Congratulations, Connor. Great drive. And you faced off a lot of pressure from Chris Ireland.
Yeah, it was a good race. It was, Chris gave me a good old battle there. It's good to verse the DPR guys. Versed him a lot in the NASCAR, so yeah, I've got a lot of respect for those guys that race those colours. It's good to race them.
Certainly is. The timing of the safety car worked out well for you guys as well. Had to save a bit of fuel touring behind the safety car, but it all ended up working out well in the end for strategy.
Just turned off the car rolling around for those 2 laps. I actually thought we would only do 1 lap of safety car, but we did 2 and just turned off the car the whole way and just pull around at 90 k's, put the clutch in, and we ended up having enough fuel to do a big skid at the end, so pretty happy.
Yeah, it's definitely the most important part, having enough fuel for the big skids. Anyway, 100%. Yeah, coming into the Split 1 race later on tonight, you, Ireland and Horton will be joining our Split 1 field, we presume. So the night is far from over for you. You've obviously learned quite a bit from this event.
I learned that the setup was terrible. That's the one thing. I think I was just swinging off the roll bars the whole time. I was 12 and 6 at the start, then I'm 10 and 5 at the end, and bumped the bias up to a stupid number. So yeah, look, it's all right. Maybe I'll do Split 1, but car feels pretty bad. I mean, the drop bear car's been amazing for the last 3 rounds. We've done SCOPS, but we just haven't put much commitment in this round. So look, we've learnt that it's not too good, but might do Split 1 and just carry the drop bear flag to the finish line.
All right, well, congratulations once again, Connor. The floor is yours. Win on the board. Anyone you'd like to thank for your performance? Love to thank Drop Bear Motorsports. They've been an absolute awesome group of guys to hang out with and work with for all the events we've been doing, and getting back into the supercar after 3 months. It's been good fun. Would like to thank Neuropower, Soul Beauty Products, and all the Drop Bear sponsors, and Nitro Racing as well. Might as well give them a mention, the NASCAR team. Why not? And Jaden Green, he actually did all my suits and helmets just this week, so she's looking pretty shiny at the moment, and hopefully it gives me some good luck. Yes, indeed. Wishing you all the best for Split 1, Connor Nixon, if you do indeed jump in there later on. That's going to conclude runnings for Split 2, and we're going to go on a very quick breather here on SimSpeed TV, but we'll be back in just a few moments' time for the Split 1 action from Road America. God, I'm glad we're back here. See you in a bit.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. visit iRacing.com.
You're watching V8SCOPS Round 9 here on SimSpeed TV. Whichever platform you're coming from, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Kick, we say hello to you once again. And we bring you Split 1 action from Road America. This is going to be a very interesting race indeed. The driver's choice round for this season. Big vote happened, Road America won, and boy, are we glad of it. It's been fantastic action in Split 2, and we're looking for more of the same in Split 1, hopefully without as many crashes and big incidents. But we'll have to wait and see on that. If you're just joining us, I'm Reese Gardner. Dean Hunt is still here in the comms box, but we are joined as well by Jake Sperry. If you've been following V8SCOPS for a long time, you might remember when Sperry was the lead commentator on this series. Well, he's come back for this round, and we really appreciate him being here. Thanks for coming back, Sperry. Looking forward to calling it like the old days again.
Well, there is one thing to remember about this circuit, and I think it's quite important in the driver's mind why this track was selected above everything else, is that this used to be the final place that this season went to. It was always Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, championship finale. No wonder it's got such a warm spot in so many people's hearts and minds as we get to racing at America's National Park of Speed. I'm looking forward to it here today. 31 laps worth of racing action to crown an opportunity here of victory, and these drivers will keep alert to what they need to do today, because this is heading towards that crunch time of the season. There is only one more round like this before we hit the Enduro Triple to end the season outright.
Exactly right. Imola, Road Atlanta, Imola, Sandown, and Bathurst to end off the season for the Enduros. But like you say, there is one more regular round in the form of Road Atlanta in a few weeks' time. So looking forward to that one as well, ending off the American portion of the season. It's basically the American triple. We had Sonoma last week, we have Road America this week, and then Road Atlanta coming later. Practice is on at the moment with Dylan Rudd setting the fastest time just a few moments ago. The session only went up a very short time ago, so the drivers are rushing to get their times in, and we have a little eye into the conditions as well. It's a lot warmer than Split 2 was, Dean. You mentioned that Road America is notorious for heating up. Well, it has. We've got a 42 degrees Celsius track temperature out there.
Yeah, it's very toasty out there, Reese, and I think it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon, so right at probably the hottest part of the day, so expect it maybe to cool down as the race progresses, but for now, it's very, very hot out there, so look for those tyres to be burning a little bit faster than we're used to seeing in Split 2, especially those left-hand side tyres for those right-hand corners we were talking about earlier, especially the carousel and the kink.
Yeah, absolutely. The tyres would have lasted a lot longer in Split 2 than they would here with those high track temperatures. About 10 to 15 laps generally is how long the tyres last before the pace starts dropping off. It'll probably be more around 12 laps at the most, I think, before we start seeing those big pace drop-offs. That's the format, 31 laps, as Sperry said, 90% fuel tank restriction, which means there's going to be 2 compulsory pit stops in this race, and the pit window is nice and wide, opens at the end of lap 2 and goes all the way until the very end of the race. But the window in which you can actually get those 2 pit stops done and make it to the end, quite a few different strategies that we will see from the drivers today. We'll go into more detail about that shortly. Before we do, I think probably an opportune time to look at how things stand going into this 9th round of V8SCOPS for 2024. In terms of the drivers, well, it has been the James Scott show. Since joining up with Lobs Esports, he, Dylan Rudd, and I'm losing my train of thought there. The third driver in the team is Andrew Gilliam. That is correct. And we also have Luke Rosella as well. Yes. Griffin Gardner joining up with the team as well. Thanks very much, Jay, for saving me there. I always end up forgetting one piece of crucial info in the middle of the V8SCOPS broadcast. I mean, Sperry, you've been away for a while, but nothing's changed there.
Well, you're looking at the table, and James Scott absolutely dominant right now, over 1,000 points clear up over at the top, leaving pretty much a case of procession behind. The likes of Dylan Rudd, Rehan Lianaj is going to need to be out there. So it's basically a minor positions battle that we've got out here at the moment for second, for third, for fourth, for fifth. That's where we sit, and drivers are looking at opportunity here today to try and move up and gain a little bit more. I think it's not out of the realms of possibility that drivers are going to look around at each other and think, you know what, I do want to make a charge here today. We've got ourselves the opportunity to say, right, time to stamp down and really get what we want. And because this is a classic circuit that has been in V8SCOPS for a very long time, you are getting that opportunity to see some drivers who maybe haven't necessarily had all the pace to get themselves in and around have that opportunity now to put their best foot forward and find the result they want.
Absolutely. Zach Rattray White was in the top 5 there. Remember, he came second on Friday night in the Pro Invitational Series with Jake Burton winning that race. So, yeah, look out for... not Pro Invitational. It was the FIA Motorsport Games qualifier for the Asia Pacific region. Brilliant broadcast that was here on SimSpeed. Make sure that you check it out on replay when you have the opportunity. Lobs Esports dominating the team standings. They occupy the top 2 spots in the Drivers' Championship. They have been the best prepared team over the course of the entire season. But Trans-Tasman Racing, largely in the form of Brady Myers, has been really pressuring them for race results as of recent. And I'm sure that TTR are going to be gearing up for Enduros for a full-on assault. Here's the championship leader, James Scott, in the Doing OK and blazoned 088. And I would be very surprised, Sperry, if we don't see him on the front row tonight, if not outright pole position. Right on board around Road America with him here in the practice session. Super long front straight to start off the lap, and then you're hard on the brakes at the second set of cones there into turn 1. An overtaking opportunity, but it doesn't look like it from in the car.
No, it doesn't. It's not the massive amount of braking zone that you get there at turn 1, but you do have this sort of short shoot run over to turn 3. Sometimes you've got an opportunity if turn 1 hasn't been the place to get the lap sorted. Now keep an eye under the Sargento Bridge. You are flying your way through the Moraine Sweep, and opportunity is about sensing the braking zones here. It's a long braking zone, 5, 4, 3. You're almost braking at the top of the hill, using that hill to roll into the corner here at turn 5, and then driving back up for an opportunity under the Corvette Bridge and the very tough plateaued corner of turn number 6, where you are trying to find, I would say, a finite braking point, and no one's ever truly got it 100% correct. Through now into the hurry down section, where this is where transfer comes into play, through turn number 8, and then the long carousel, a sweeping 180-degree right, where you are absolutely torturing at 150 clicks on the gun, the left-hand side tyres, as you try to work for a drive off of the exit under the Henry Bridge and looking for the kink, what is going to be one of the fastest corners out there on circuit. Do not, under any circumstances, go too wide through that section of road. Now you're on the Kettle Bottoms and the Run to Canada corner, the corner closest here to the country of Canada. We find ourselves about an hour's out from Green Bay in Wisconsin, so all those looking for Title Town need to go through Bill Mitchell Bend, the off-camber left to turn 13, and then that final corner, square it up for turn 14, make the drive up the hill, and it is all about runs as you try and get yourself up forward. It's all about finding the run. 3 great places to make a pass here today. We're sure to see a lot of them.
That we are, and look at that time from James Scott. A solid 7/10 clear of Jacob O'Reilly in the Vermilion Esports 222. Good run from O'Reilly in practice, I have to say. He's been able to get some good times down, and I wasn't really expecting him to be that far up, but ever since Vermilion upped their driver lineup and split into Vermilion Esports and Vermilion Motorsports, and also started their coach coaching business. This team has really come in leaps and bounds, and O'Reilly, I think, one of their leaders at the moment. Paul Young doing quite well too in the Phase 4 number 40, third place at the moment in the practice session. Leonage putting himself nicely into the top 5 so far. We can't count out Chris Coxhead either, currently P6 for Team Jinx Shifters. Coxhead winning in dominant fashion in the V8 support category last night, so always keep an eye out for him around Road America.
You definitely have to keep an eye out, and you've got to keep yourself quite focused. Here's someone who has been in and around and has done pretty much everything here in this series. Brett Loxton in 19th position, currently in the 209 Team Jinx Shifters machine, always hoping to try and make a good run up forward and gain a few places, but that's what we're going to be seeing here. Drivers maybe who've got something to prove, trying to go out there and prove it. The Phoenix Racing team car there of Rehan Leonage just going up there into second position over the course of the practice, just 4 minutes remaining there, and this will be where they're doing their final fettlings and fine-tunings. They're looking at maybe how can I make a slight improvement, trying to fine-tune the car to the conditions out there, and you will get a sense of, well, what are we doing, what do we need to look at in terms of what we are going forward with. You're talking about tyre temperatures, so when you're trying to keep the tyres in an operating window in hot temperatures like today, you're looking at what can you do on the tyre pressures to give them a little change out there. Blake Warboys, you can see out there 11th position in the WK&P Sim Sports car at the moment. One thing to note, quite blustery here today, 19 kilometres an hour from the southwest. That's going to be causing a little bit of havoc in some of the braking zones.
Yeah, certainly will. When you're at those high speeds, those wind gusts have a pretty big impact on the cars. They're not as sensitive to wind gusts as you might say in like a GTP or a IndyCar, an open wheel machine, but it's definitely an effect, and you have to be prepared for that on your way into these corners. Well, we're coming up now on the last few minutes of practice here, Dean. Joshua Horton, who finished third in the Split 2 race we just called together, currently out there at the moment trying to get himself into a good position here in practice, see how his times compare to everyone else. It's good to see that our Split 2 top 3 have made their way into this session.
Yeah, the 3 boys at the top did a fantastic job, and specifically Horton, he gained a lot of positions from the very back of the grid to get his golden ticket into the Split 1 from his P3 finish, so fantastic stuff from him. And of course, Ireland and Connor Nixon as well. Obviously, Nixon taking out the win, and Chris Ireland was really giving Nixon a run for his money for the most part of that race and putting a lot of pressure on, but couldn't quite get the win. But I'm sure he's absolutely stoked to be here in the top split.
Yeah, and Nixon apparently not available for Split 1, so we won't be seeing him racing here, but we do have Chris Ireland, and we do have the Vermilion car of Joshua Horton, so it'll be interesting to see where they put themselves up in this field. Ryan Jones is also part of the field tonight, Sperry. We don't often see him in a V8 supercar, but I'm sure he'll have a big go at this one. It's his first Split 1 V8SCOPS start since 2020. Man, 4 years.
Well, no pressure there, Ryan. It's the sort of race where you sit in and you go, yeah, it'll be nice to jump in and see what I can do, you know, throw some moves left and right. But ultimately, it's about being able to stick on the dance floor at the end of the day. So for someone like Ryan Jones, who is out here hoping for an opportunity to move forward and gain some places and just see what he can get out of this result. No championship looks here or there with what he's trying to do. This is probably the most refreshed he's going to be, but the issue that drivers will find around a driver like Ryan Jones here today is what do you have to do in order to make the moves, make progression, and gain the places that are all needed, because you are battling with someone that you don't necessarily have much experience battling with before, and because of that, not having that experience, it's going to mean that maybe there are going to be some, I would say, a little bit more peculiar moves being thrown and respect earned rather than given.
Yes. this is the consequence of a long-running league like V8SCOPS. You know, you have a core group of drivers that have been here from the very start, drivers like Stenberg and Loxton, for example. And then you have drivers like Jones, who may have competed for a while but have dropped out for quite a long time. But yeah, we'll see how they end up faring in the midst of the checkered flag flying for practice, as that is a race control message that we definitely would not like to see. Yeah, not a fun one indeed. So yeah, that might be some fallout that's happened from the very controversial Split 2 race that we just saw on the board there. In any case, Sperry, it's qualifying time. We can move on from that, and we can watch some cars setting fast times around a classic American road racing circuit. It is split qualifying, and we have the first group getting ready to go now. Leading the charge out there is the Phoenix Racing Team car of William Brown, who was promoted to Split 1 after a driver in Split 1 had to pull out.
Yeah, so often you'll find that certain drivers will be promoted up by availability. Sometimes it happens. It's what's known as an alternate system. And as such, William Brown will be one of the lucky recipients of that alternate and jumps in as a first alternate in to go forward. So that's what they're going to be keeping their eyes out on. With 32 drivers here today, it's quite simple. It's the bottom 16 in pre-qualification that have to go out first, and then the top 16 go out afterwards. In theory, that puts in a very interesting situation for those drivers here in this session. They've got to absolutely go out and find that time over the course of their 15 minutes worth of racing action in qualifying. If they put their best time forward, they will be on course for what they need, but they are fighting against the track conditions out there, Reese, because of the fact that this track is going to have a little bit of use on it, and it will rubber up with these 16 cars out there putting lap times down. You'd feel that there's an opportunity for the track to cure over the course of the 5 minutes where there's no running on the circuit, but grip levels I think is important, which is why pre-qualification, I believe, is vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing you'll have to consider is, as the drivers are pounding their way around this circuit, the track is going to be heating up even more. It still remains at 42 degrees Celsius out there, so the track will already be quite greasy, but you put more rubber down, that rubber heats up as cars put energy into the asphalt, and it'll get even slipperier. So like you say, Sperry, the curing of the track in that little break in between the sessions is going to be crucial for the drivers in Group 2, which we're going to see later on. Well, the laps are beginning now for our groups here. Brown's still at the front of the queue as the number 80 here of Josh Horton will make his way around the final corner and start his first lap. He's got the JTIT Race on Horse Commodores following him. Ryan Jones in the 111 already through the first turn here, and it's going to be very important to nail this first lap. You only get 15 minutes here, and that might seem like a long time, but it takes 2 minutes and 6 seconds on average to complete a lap around here. So you're only going to get, well, that's basically 7 laps. And you got to account for the out laps and the in laps as well. So the drivers only get maybe 3 opportunities to set a time here, if that.
Well, they don't have long in terms of what they've got because of this long lap around this circuit. So because they're having to deal with these long laps, yes, they are going to have to be a little bit pick and choose with what they've got out there. And that's why you've got to get up to speed quickly. It's going to be all about those out laps, getting 1 lap in. And then if you're on course, then that second lap, I think you're going to have to abandon quite quickly. A lot of these drivers will run to about 80% full power on the runs along the straights, on their out laps, just to get the tyres into an operating window. And just looking Ryan Jones versus Zach Rattray-White, you can see that Zach's up a 10th in the opening sector, so there's definitely some smiles to be had there for Zach Rattray-White at this point. Ryan Jones throwing it through the kink, and you've got to be very alert around these laps, because one off-track incident point or any contact of any kind, 0x through to 4x, and that'll be that. Your lap time is invalidated, so they're going to be dancing on the boards, looking for a chance to put those times in as the DPR machine will make that charge through the penultimate corner of Bill Mitchell, trying to line up that final corner out on track. Slightly misses the apex there on the inside. It's going to need to try and gather that up back up the hill, but for Ryan Jones, we'll see what this lap time is as a benchmark here to get over to the line. We were seeing 2:06s in practice for the best times, and that one doesn't count.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate there for Ryan Jones, but to the front of the field go Ben Morris, James Chastanerf and Kurt Stenberg. Logan Barnett, fastest time so far, a 2:06.7. Troy Stone Street and David Kirby go 6th and 7th fastest as Horton's first lap puts him inside the top 4. Good stuff initially. For the moment, though, looks like Logan Barnett has the advantage over everyone else. That is about 3-4 tenths that he's got over Ben Morris at the moment. Chris Miller, meanwhile, not setting a valid lap time because we hear he ran off the track at turn 4 in quite a big way. There's a bit of a close pack here, too close for comfort, and Miller just running a bit too deep into the turn there, off into the gravel trap, and that is lap invalidated for him. Just a consequence of drivers going out all at the same time here, Dean. This is something that we often see in V8SCOPS qualifying around tracks like this. You want the slipstream. You want that extra little bit of speed down the straights, but you can't afford to be too close around other cars. Otherwise, you don't get the clear air to maximize your time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a bit of a balance game. I was just looking at my track map, and we had between the kink and the final corner, every single car on track in that same section, bar one. So they're all sort of tripping over each other, and we saw that, of course, just happen with Chris Miller, and it's easy to do. You're trying to worry about all the cars around you. Maybe it's first banker lap, maybe get out into the open air and see if you can make one, put it in the bank, and then go out the next time and get in the draft maybe.
Yeah, that is the big question. Well, Matt Morris now trying to get a time on the board here, and we've seen some good drives from Matt this year in V8SCOPS. He's certainly one of the drivers that loves to try his hardest out there. A little bit ginger coming into turn 8 there, but I think he's just focusing on getting a banker in at this point, Sperry.
Yeah, he's going to need a banker, a little bit of a dab at the brakes through the middle of the corner, trying to get some rotation through the rear of the car, and that's sometimes what you find is easy and difficult in equal measures. This is a car that is unique, I believe, to the iRacing service. It's unique to the world of motorsport as a concept in general, because you've got all the power, all the torque, all the grunt and brute force that you get, say, in something absolutely wonderful. You can hit the high speeds of 300 kilometers an hour on some straights over the course of the season, but you don't have the aerodynamic grip to throw it in the corner, so you need a long braking zone to go through. And on top of that, you deal with the fact that you've not got many fancy gimmicks and gadgets to help you get through those corners. You're pretty much dancing on a tightrope, and that can be very, very tough. Mustang up the hill for Matt Morris and heading over the line. We'll see what Matt can do in comparison to Ben, with Ben in second position overall. Matt Morris crosses the line, goes only 8th fastest there with a 2:07.6, and he's lucky that he's just caught himself with that lap. He's not going on to a fly, because look at the traffic there for Zach Rattray White as off the road trying to get out of the way. That's Kurt Stenberg.
Yeah, that was poor timing for those cars to be coming out of pit lane as Rattray White was beginning his first real lap in this session. Yeah, Zach's not going to be too happy with how that's gone down. He's missed a golden opportunity there for a lap. So we'll have to wait and see if he can get another time on the board. See, the track looks clear now, but then he sees that snake of cars coming out, and he's probably thinking, oh no, why now? And comes right up on Stenberg in the middle of turn 1.
Stenberg was absolutely idling there through that section of road, and he's got no excuse. You've got to get out of the way. If you are on an out lap, you have to be, absolutely have to be on your alert if you're on an out lap, because you're going to have drivers on flying laps, and you have to make sure that you are not impeding other drivers. And I would suggest that from a driver's perspective there, going through that section of road, that Zach Rattray White should throw an opportunity in to say, I want to lodge a protest, because that could have been my qualifying done and dusted in that one moment if he hadn't have been
huge contact at the kink between William Brown and Christopher Ireland. Brown was sent airborne, sideswiping Ireland through the corner, and seems like he's gotten some damage now. We'll have to make his way back into the pits if at all possible. As Commodore now. Race on Oz, veteran team competing in V8SCOPS for many seasons now, and they're one of those teams that you always it's sort of like home, really. You know, you always see these guys. You know, at some point in the midfield, they're occasionally getting some fantastic top 10 results, and they've been making some further moves forward in recent years. Though Blackburn is going to be making some moves off the racetrack there at the kink, and I think that lap's going to be invalidated.
Yeah, it looks like that way. And for Tyler Blackburn and the Race on Oz team, they're needing to put something down. Only 12 times currently set. Now, I do want to note that it's quite important with the Ireland and Brown incident out there that both drivers drove their cars back. William Brown with the black and orange mechanical flag to try and get back into the pits. Now, the key thing for William Brown with that damage is that might pretty much write off his qualifying session. I'm not entirely sure at this stage, so that will be a huge amount of looks going through unless he gets a brand new car for qualifying and is able to jump back out again. But you know, that damage is pretty big. There's Joe Mahoney, who is over the line in 12th position and hoping for a little bit more out there at the moment, and they are really starting to run out of time now. We're talking into final laps territory.
Yeah, we are, and crucially for Brown, he was able to get into the pits, get the car repaired, and get back out there with the crucial, say, 3 minutes and 45 seconds remaining in the session when he came out. So I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to get at least one lap on the board here. James Chastaneuf, meanwhile, maintaining a position in the top 3 for the time being, but he'll be wary of potential improvements. It's a hot track, so it's going to be difficult to make those improvements. As we see what happened there between Brown and Ireland, the front left suspension was destroyed before Brown even hit the ground. Well, that's obviously going to be under review by race control, I'm sure, but James Chastaneuf out of the final corner now to the line. See if he can get into the 206 bracket, get anywhere close to Logan Barnett's 206.7. It's going to be a 207.5 for James Chastaneuf. That's way off what he set before, well, that's not going to result in any improvement at all. There are improvements for Michael Angus and David Kirby, also for Ireland and Miller, finally putting themselves into 6th and 11th.
Yep, so they're able to jump up and gain a couple places there, so they'll be quite happy. Now, we're just getting word from race control that for Zach Rattray-White's moment with Kurt Stenberg, that is currently under review for qualifying impedance. And I think it was pretty slam dunk in the scenario that you saw out there on circuit about 5 minutes to go. The 2-minute warning has been thrown up out there, and of course the issue out there between Brown and Ireland is also being put down as qualifying impedance as well. But I think the stewards will take a much dimmer view of that second incident rather than first because of the high-speed nature and the close-up that goes there through that section. Zach Rattray-White right now, I think, is desperate for a lap time, and this is going to be the test of the mettle of a driver right now here, Reese. When you've got the chips down, you've got nothing on the board, minimal time remaining, you've got to throw it all down together and put one lap on the board.
That's exactly right. Let's see what Zach Rattray-White can do here. Wait for the lap time to come down. Looking at Rattray-White's times in practice, I mean, it was good enough for 4th. He's certainly one of the quicker drivers out there, but it's right at the end of a session where we've seen cars running on a very hot track, and so there's probably not going to be much grip available to him here. He needs to be careful to keep it off the grass, unlike the car behind him. So we'll see how that one goes for him. Behind Rattray-White at the moment is William Brown, who started his hot lap and unfortunately pinching the brakes a little into turn 5 as he follows his teammate Shokan Atake around. The Phoenix Racing team cars helping each other out in the slipstream there. So we'll see where Brown puts himself, but we're really interested in White at the moment as he makes his way through the carousel. There on the bottom of your screen is William Brown. Wasn't expecting to be racing in Split 1 tonight, but he's here and he has to get this lap on the board. Rattray White coming through the kink now. Man, he is using all of the curb and then some through that section. Dipping a wheel into the grass there. That's not quite enough for an off track though, so this lap should still be good for him. Now he has to get on the brakes for Canada Corner, and this is where the money is really made. This braking zone, it's a little faster than it looks through this corner. You just clip the gravel there to get the fastest line through the turn. Uphill through Bill Mitchell Bend, all over the curb on the inside. We'll see if this is the lap that Zach Rattray White has been hoping for.
He's hoping that this one works through the final corner and up the hill. Zach Rattray White needing at least a 206.7 to have any hopes of pole position. We'll see what this is over the line. It's going to be a tough time for him as he goes through. It's a 206.9. It's good enough for the front row currently, but that was pretty much when you needed to find something. You got to get it down on the board. That worked out quite nicely. The likes of William Brown coming over the line puts an 8.6 down on the board. That's the back of the field outright, and I am just hearing a little bit of word about car 23 out there with car 196. So Christopher Ireland is going to have a pit lane start, I'm hearing, at the end of what he's going forward, and on top of that there should be a pit lane start for car 47 as well, which will mean that Kurt Stenberg also is starting from the pits.
Man, Ireland currently 7th, Stenberg currently 11th on the timesheets. That's going to really sting for them. We still have to wait for the second group of qualifying to come through, and I'm sure that they'll be starting further down the field as a result of that anyway. But yeah, a pit lane start for Ireland and Stenberg thanks to qualifying impedance. So yeah, that's the confirmation there. Ireland getting in the way of William Brown and ruining his hot lap, as unfortunately his first attempt at one. And Brown was only able to do good enough for basically last of the drivers that have set times in this session. So those are the initial results from Group 1 of qualifying. Logan Barnett for Evolution Racing Team, a fantastic time there, 2:06.7. Rattray White only able to do a time 0.3 slower than what he set in practice. If he'd been able to set the lap time earlier, it might have been faster on a slightly cooler track. Morris, Chasteneuf and Horton rounding out your top 5 for the time being. Actually, pretty much equal on times down to the 1,000th with Sho Kanatake. Ireland, of course, running the 7th fastest time, but he will be starting from pit lane. Morris, Angus and Poynton rounding out your top 10. Then it's Stenberg, 11th fastest time, but he's got a pit lane start as well. Troy Stone Street, Chris Miller and David Kirby, 12th to 14th. And then we'll have Blackburn, Mahoney, Jones, Brown and Baker setting times. Mahoney, Jones and Brown rounding out your field there. Everyone's coming on in to the pit lane now. We have an opportunity for a slight break here. So Dean, suppose your thoughts on that initial phase of qualifying. It looks like impedance is going to be a big point of contention when Group 2 comes out.
Yeah, big time, and at the moment the Proven Energy safety car just doing a lap to make sure everyone's off the circuit. But yeah, I think the guys are going to be really careful. A couple of times I looked up at my track map and I could see a cluster of cars in the same spot. So you've really got to be careful to make sure you get out in the right bit of fresh air, but also trying to find that balance of maybe I can get a draft. And that's where some team play might come into it, where you have one go out in front and then you sort of swap around and have another go on your second lap, and you both get a bit of a draft, but you can keep out of the sort of packs and out of the traffic, which, you know, we've seen a couple of issues for the likes of Zach Rattray White, for example. Got into a bit of trouble coming out of the pit lane, was the car in front of him, and really just had to put a lot of pressure on himself to put that final lap in, but he managed to get a pretty solid one down. But you can only think, like, could it have been better if he didn't get impeded on the first one and had a better run at it.
Hello to you too, Blake Warboys. who will be making his way out very shortly in Group 2. There's a lot of very fantastic drivers getting ready to jump on out here at their final call here. With 15 minutes remaining in the session, that's when the call's going to be made by race control, just in 30 seconds time. And we'll be keeping a close eye on Rehan Lienage here as well. Youngest driver in the field, Sperry, exploded onto the scene a couple of years ago and has gotten some great results since. He's still searching for more consistent victories.
Well, this is what happens when you've got talent. Talent is something that will outright, early on in a driver's career, give you the opportunity to go and find some great results, and they will pretty much jump themselves up quite infrequently, because you need to build that muscle memory. You need to build that tolerance to racing and putting yourself into distances. You will look back throughout the history of sim racing, and the big comparison that I'll put to Rehan Lienage at this moment is Sebastian Job, and it is deserved in terms of that, because it's about finding that pace, jumping up onto the scene, and it did take Sebastian Job about 5 or 6 years worth of sim racing to truly become one of the all-time greats that sim racing has had to offer over the course of racing careers in the world. He grew up in a scenario where you had the likes of Gregor Houtu and Martin Kroenke and all of those fantastic drivers out there trying to put their best foot forwards as we get into rush hour traffic where nobody wants to lead. But you get the sense that Rehan's in that similar position where he needs people around him who are going to push him first and foremost to try and get the best results he can. And he also needs to develop into being a racer, because it does take time. And of course, he's got the natural pace, but he will still need that time to develop. And I'm sure that in 5 to 10 years' time, he's going to be one of the big threat drivers that you're going to be seeing week in and week out when it comes to SCOP racing.
Yeah, I would expect that as well, as the queue now forms, and the second Lobs Esports car there of Dylan Rudd finding his way past Paul Young, who's trying to get the slipstream off the fastest drivers in the session. We got Jacob O'Reilly right up there, as well as Dylan Pereira, teammate to Rehan Lienage. I think Dylan would be hoping that there are a few less cars between himself and Rehan there. It would be nice to get a slipstream off your teammate, fastest driver in the team, who is currently sitting behind the championship leader in the queue. James Scott will lead us around here on this first run of laps. The only problem here is they're still quite close together, and that brings in a lot of risk to this initial set of hot laps, Dean. We're hearing that Robert Gibbs is the only driver that is outside of the queue here as the power gets put down.
Yeah, Gibbs on his own there. He's miles in front of the queue, so he didn't want any part of the gamesmanship in that rush hour traffic, as you said, Sperry, because that was pretty full on. But they're all sort of jostling to say, oh, you go first, because obviously you get the tow. But James Scott currently leading that pack, and with his teammate just behind him in tail as well. So maybe a little piece of helping for Rudd behind him. But Scott just sort of saying, oh, fine, if you're not going to do it, I'll do it.
Well, the big thing here, and I just want to point this out, is that it's everyone trying to get onto the back of James Scott's wheel, and I think that's rather important out there in terms of the qualifying as Robbie Gibbs goes out there on his lap. Everybody wants to be on the fastest driver's wheel, and that is the price you have to pay by being a leader of the championship by over 1,000 points. It is simply put that James Scott's trying to get through and get what he wants, but I think what's just been clever of what's been happening is that Dylan Rudd made his way through at Canada Corner Gates Rehan Lienage, and because of that, he gave James Scott a massive buffer to play with on that run, so nobody can take his draft.
Yeah, very smart move by Dylan Rudd there, playing the team game for sure at Lobs Esports. Everyone else is currently making their way down to turn 5 right now, but Robbie Gibbs, the man on his own here at the very front of the qualifying queue, almost half a lap ahead of everyone else here, making his way through the carousel up to the kink. He will be the benchmark by which everyone else is tested. Now, the number 2 of Gibbs, His fastest time in practice was a 2:07.7, which is a little bit further down than I was expecting, but regardless, he'll be able to try and match it here. Won't have the benefit of slipstream, of course, but a cool track with not many cars around him. In fact, all on his own out there, and he'll be able to maximize his pace here. All the way across the tarmac runoff at the exit of Bill Mitchell Bend, and through the final corner we come. Let's see if Robbie Gibbs will be able to match that 2:06.7 that Logan Barnett set in Group 1. Can he join his Evolution Racing Team teammate at the provisional top of the timesheets? 2:06.808 will certainly do that, solidly into second provisionally.
Yep, so that's a good lap time there as things go forward. But you look at James Scott and what those times are going. 36.6 in the opening sector, 57.5 in the second. Absolutely reaming the car through the penultimate corner there, getting right out over onto the cut through between turns 5 and turn number 14, and you get the look as James Scott gets over towards the line that is a magical lap time. That's an 0.59, but the key is that Rayhan behind is only 600 short, so you're getting these drivers, they're putting those practice times in. I wonder how much fuel they had for the practice times as Jay Brazier dives into the pits, not happy with that first lap.
Yeah, not happy at all. Interesting to see that it was Dylan Rudd who I think got an off track on that lap, and he actually pulled over coming out of the final corner to allow Lienage past. So Dylan Rudd not getting a very good start to this qualifying session. He'll be off sync with everyone else now. We'll see if he'll be able to match those scintillating times that we've seen there from Scott and Lienage. Great job from Jacob O'Reilly as well to put himself in third, and Blake Warboys in fourth, 2:06.3. That is a very solid time from the WKMP Mustang.
Yeah, that is a very solid time, and Blake Warboys is someone who goes hot and cold, I think, in races. He's sometimes right up there at the pointy end, giving himself everything. Apparently, you're not supposed to feed his cat, I believe that is there, because she's already been fed. But out there at this point in time, I think Blake Warboys is looking to be fed right now with 3 extra positions at this moment, 4 tenths adrift, and you can definitely get the sense right now that he is gritting his teeth trying to drive. You can see how much force feedback is going through his setup. His chair is oscillating through his arms with the steering wheel, and there's the wry smile out there at the moment because he knows that he's got a little bit of communications out there at the moment. How you doing, Blake?
How you doing indeed? I think he's going to be focusing on getting the car back to the pits as quickly as possible so he can reset and do another run. James Scott as well, driving at nearly full speed around this in-lap, will immediately pull to the right and head for the pit lane. So that's the first phase of this second group of qualifying done there. The teams making their way into the pits here, and well, all eyes are going to be on Dylan Rudd, I'd imagine, to see how far up he can get on his first real opportunity at a hot lap. The only other driver to not set a time there was Jay Brazier. Jamie Dyke, I believe, was part of Group 1, but he didn't end up going out onto the circuit. So, yeah, Rudd and Brazier are the drivers we're going to be watching here to see their first attempts. And, well, Jay is out there at the moment, now trying to get on to his first hot lap. Another driver who's decided to break the trend and not be part of the train.
Well, he was part of the train to begin with, but must have had an off-track or something on his opening lap, so abandoned it, got himself off strategy with everybody else, and now's looking to try and throw a lap time together. In fact, again, not happy with that as Jay Brazier dives into the pit. So twice he's now been caught out with it, and now he'll definitely be off the back of the train as he'll need a new fresh set of boots to go out there and qualify once again. So you're definitely getting the troubles out there at this moment coming through. Chris Coxhead currently in 7th position now will lead that next train going forward, not necessarily wanting to have too many troubles out there in the Jinx Shifter's car, but you really look around and think, well, what do you have to offer right now at this point? What can you gain out of this scenario? We're not necessarily going to be seeing a lot of these drivers dealing with impeding out there in this qualifying, mainly because they're all on the same strategy. There's no one to impede if you're all doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, 100% correct. Everyone's just deciding, okay, we're all going to go out as one group. We'll set our hot laps, and if one of us makes a mistake, we'll jump out of the way as soon as it's convenient and let drivers carry on, because you don't want to incur the wrath of race control like happened for Kurt Stenberg and Chris Ireland. I did hear from race director Dan Yeaman that apparently Jamie Dyke did try to set some laps in Group 1, but all of his laps were invalid, and he is now left the server. So I don't know if we're going to be seeing Jamie Dyke taken to the start here tonight. Regardless, Chris Coxhead is the one up the front here for this next queue. Interesting to see that James Scott for Lobs Esports, as well as Dylan Rudd, they are in their own little subgroup at the moment. There's two different trains of cars that are formed on the circuit at the moment. There's this one, and then further on back, just making their way into the kink now, is the next queue headed up by Dylan Rudd. He's got Leonage, Pereira, Scott, Baker, Warboys, and O'Reilly for company. They're going to be the heavy hitters in this qualifying session, I'd imagine.
Well, the issue you got here is that James Scott's in the middle of this. He's about fourth car back in this train, and I think he's going to be a little bit caught out here by the likes of Dylan Pereira, who went about 0.6 of a second slower on that last run forward. There's more jostling as Warboys goes ahead of Ewan Baker out there, who's 13th fastest currently. Those drives going through. Dylan Rudd's going to pull over to one side, is going to now let Rayhan take that group, but Paul Young out there on a lap, currently in 8th position. I wonder here if Rayhan's going to have to go out there, pull a lap time on his own, but Young heading down turn 2, in towards turn 3, will be loving the tow he'll be getting from Chris Coxhead all the way through the Moraine Suite.
Absolutely. New livery on the Phase 4 Commodore as well. I've gotten quite used to seeing him in the usual bronze colour scheme that we usually see from those cars, but a little bit more of a splash of red and white as he makes his way down to turn 5, solidly in the slipstream of Coxhead, who makes a mistake on the exit of the corner, and Young won't have any slipstream opportunities through the kettle bottoms on this lap. He'll have to focus on the middle phase of the circuit on his own here. You're pushing so hard over these curbs. There's that bump on the exit of the curb there at Hurry Downs. A lot of places for this track to throw a curveball at you. It's a deceptively treacherous place.
Oh, it really is. And going through 7 to 8, everyone thinks it's easy. It's the chance in the lap that you've got to relax and basically take all of that stress and lactic acid out of the body. It's not. It's very difficult through that section if you just allow half a second's breathing time to make that mistake. You'll easily miss that braking marker and find yourselves into trouble. Paul Young currently on a 2:06.6 as things currently stand, knowing that he needs 0.03 of a second to jump Chris Coxhead, who of course we saw run into troubles. Robert Gibbs having a good lap there back there in the Evolution Racing Team car. He is clawing his way back in with the slipstream through at turn 13 and now over towards 14, the final corner out here on circuit. These laps are important right now. They're sitting with 2.5 minutes, and if they can't get that lap time sorted, well, they're going to have to go on a second lap to find it. They really haven't had many chances to put the best lap on the board, and just looking at it, that's a 6.5 from Paul Young, good enough for 7th.
Yep, just overtook Chris Coxhead. Whiting gains 2 spots, puts Latta and Barnett down to 10th and 11th. Loxton improving to 12th spot, gets a little bit closer to his teammate who he came together with in the V8 support category race last night. A little bit of a sheepish atmosphere, I think, at Team Jinx Shifters after that one. In any case, Dylan Rudd, now the lead car in this pack here for Lobs Esports. Let's see if Rudd can finally get a valid lap time time on the board here with less than 2 minutes remaining in the session. It's a 2:05.9 that he'll be aiming for, and it's going to be a 2:06.0. That puts him solidly there in third place. James Scott improves further to a 2:05.6. Can anyone stop him? He won the first 7 rounds of the season on the trot. His streak was only broken by Brody Kostecki at Sonoma, who incidentally is also a part of Lobs Esports, one of the founders.
I'm going to be quite honest here and say no. No, I don't believe that James Scott can be stopped, especially when he's in this sort of form. He threatened it about 3 or 4 years ago, and he's been building up the blocks time and time again, and now he's starting to find it. This is Jay Brazier looking to make his way over towards the line. We'll see whether this is going to work for him in the 0:57. Makes the climb over the line. It's an 8.3 only for a lap time. It's a banker. Puts him 32nd on the board only, which will effectively be 30th, where you consider that you've got the 2 drivers who are having to start from the pits out there for impeding. Robbie Gibbs hoping that his final time is going to have something to say here in 15th position, knowing that all the other drivers around will be on their in-laps at this point. Gibbs, I believe, is also going to dive into the pits because they've used the good life of the tyres up, and that should be that as far as qualifying goes.
Yeah, that should be it indeed. Loxton comes in, everyone who we saw out on a hot lap coming in now. So that's going to conclude the runnings here as the clock is going to run out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you hadn't started a hot lap by this point, well, you're not going to be able to set one. That's the checkered flag in qualifying for V8SCOPS round 9, a scintillating qualifying session once again with some incredible times that we've seen from the top of the field, to say nothing of James Scott's 2:05.6. Again, every single round this season, Scott ends up doing something that I didn't think possible.
Well, sometimes that's what happens when you've got a driver who can show that level of dominance and has the pace out there to challenge some of the very best that the world has to offer. You can look at someone like James Scott, and we'll get confirmation of the pole position in just a moment, as we do now with James Scott in the front and Rehan Lienage alongside him on the front row. It is going to be all about progress. Can he find that progress, and can anybody jump him? Maybe even from the second row, you look at Dylan Rudd and Blake Warboys as drivers who could.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to seeing what Blake Warboys can do in the race session. Behind him, we'll have Jacob O'Reilly and Andre Youssef, the duo from Vermilion Esports, taking up the third row of the grid. Then it's Dylan Pereira and Ewan Baker. Solid qualifying performances from the both of them for Phoenix and for Synergy. Rounding out the top 10, we have Paul Young and Chris Coxhead. Another solid performance from those 2 drivers. I mean, they are down in 9th and 10th, but in V8SCOPS, Sperry, that is as good as a win for some people.
Well, sometimes it is, and it's all about managing results. You've got the Fishy Motorsport car of Michael Whiting and Kenneth Latter on row 6. Row 7 is going to be housed then by Logan Barnett and Brett Loxton out there in the 209 machine. Robert Gibbs is going to be on row 8 with Zach Rattray White. 17th will belong to Ben Morris, with James Chastaneuf in that 18th position. And then you look around that top 20, it'll be Joshua Horton who will be there with Sho Kanatake.
Rounding out the top 20 there, in 21st place, Chris Ireland. Well, he's going to be starting from the pits. That grid spot will be empty alongside Matt Morris. Behind them, Michael Angus and Mark Poynton taking up the 12th row of the grid. Kurt Stenberg will also be starting from the pits. Troy Stonestreet will be all alone there on the 13th row of the grid. Then we move to Chris Miller and David Kirby, 27th and 28th. Tyler Blackburn and Joe Mahoney for Race on Oz, sharing and locking out that 15th row of the grid. Ryan Jones on his return to V8SCOPS, split 1 after 4 years out, starting alongside Jay Brazier, 31st and 32nd. Our field rounded out by William Brown and Jamie Dyke, who we have heard has managed to jump back into the server, potentially after some technical issues. So 34 cars to take to the start here in V8SCOPS round 9. And as typical with Road America and Big big fields, the rear of the grid is starting uphill. Jamie Dyke taking his slot here, and he has got a little bit more momentum to build up there off the race start. But it's all going to be on here between Rehan Leonage and James Scott on this staggered grid. It's all about the launch. It's all about getting your power down as efficiently as you can, not spinning the wheels, not bogging down. All of these drivers have had more than enough practice in these cars getting those starts down, but sometimes when it comes down to that split-second decision, sometimes you make the wrong one. We'll see for the run to turn 1 here as the revs rise and the fire spits out of the exhaust pipes. V8SCOPS round 9 at Road America is go, and it's a consistent start from our front row. Scott and Leonage keeping it nice and clean here. Leonage will immediately move to block the advance of Dylan Rudd. Blake Warboys is going to do the same on the Vermilion Esports cars into turn 1 for the first time. Leonage still trying to protect second place here from Dylan Rudd. Some contact there on the exit of the first turn, but it's on for second as James Scott will obviously try to streak away from here.
Well, Dylan Rudd's throwing everything he can on the defence, and he just can't quite help enough there to make it happen. Now he needs this long run on this straight here through the Moraine Sweep to turn 5 to make it happen. Leonage goes to the middle of the road. It's all the way to the inside from Dylan Rudd, trying to find this move down on the inside, and if he can manage it, that's going to be big because it will put Lobs 1 and 2, and it does. Blake Warboys trying to sneak on through as well, doing a brilliant job. Give a bit of credit for those who've got a good start. Ewan Baker had a good start here in this one as they crest the rise and head to the hurry downs. Look at this, 3 wide up at turn 6.
Oh my God, Robbie Gibbs gets turned around by Brett Loxton there, and he's across the top of the track. Oh no, couple extra cars involved in that one. I believe Tyler Blackburn and Ryan Jones having issues in the midst of all of that as well. Blackburn is crabbing. That car's gonna have to go straight back to the pits. Meanwhile, in the background, you see Ireland and Stenberg getting off to their start from the pits, and they've arrived to a scene of carnage.
Well, I think that was absolutely ridiculous there by Robbie Gibbs. You have to hold the brakes when you get turned in a spin like that. He was completely unpredictable. He turned back into the field of play, and just like that, the race pretty much over and done with for someone like Tyler Blackburn. You've got to hold your brakes in that situation. You're going to see a look at this up the hill. Gibbs getting the move down on the inside now. There's a little bit of contact there with one of the jinx shifter cars. I think that'll be Brett Loxton, which puts him 3 wide into the middle of this group, tries to get that drive off for the exit, and he'll get turned across the nose a second time for that. But look at this, you've got to hold the brakes there, and he just completely comes back across the circuit.
Yeah, he did lift off the brakes there. Should have had him stamped to the floor, and it would have been a more predictable trajectory. So we'll see if race control has anything to say about that. In any case, the first lap of the race is complete, and we have a Lobs Esports 1-2 at the front of the field, but Leonage and Warboys are not letting them get away. This is very crucial indeed. I'm wondering how long they'll be able to hold on to the pace, though, because what the strength of the Lobs cars that I've noticed is they are able to hold on to that pace for longer. I don't know what it is they're doing with the setup or their driving styles, but they don't seem to drop off in pace as much as everyone else does when the tyres go off.
Well, that's all down to setup building, and you're seeing that here. A car that is built for the long game, that is crucial in a race like this. You can see, though, how important it is to be at the front. Now, James Scott's got a very tough challenge here at the front. He's doing all the donkey work here. That's going to mean that he's going to have more fuel burn than everyone else, as there goes the 40 of Paul Young, really giving a scrap. Ewan Baker, side-by-side contact through into turn 7. Look at the time they're costing each other, and now this will bring Chris Coxhead into play. Kenny Latta wants to try and get involved as well. There goes Chris Coxhead throwing one down the inside, but he's on the wrong side of Lady Luck for the all-important carousel.
Ewan Baker will protect the position for the time being, but that's up 1 spot now for Paul Young. They are a long way behind the top 7 pack now. It looks to be a matter of about 2 seconds that Paul Young will have to make up, and he'll be the one punching the hole through the air for this entire pack behind that goes all the way down to 30th. All the cars within a second of each other, going all the way down to Ryan Jones there in P30, and Paul Young will be able to sweep through Canada corner as as Baker is defensive on Chris Coxhead. Latta trying to find his way through. So And now at the end of lap 2, this is when the pit window opens, but I don't think we're going to be seeing anyone go in for their first compulsory pit stop just yet. It is still way too early for that. Baker now trying to defend from Coxhead as side by side for third. Blake Warboys is going to get into the top 3.
Well, he's got to make a move, and he's got to make a move quickly as Jake O'Reilly sets the fastest lap then of the race. Warboys comfortable on the front stretch, realises he's the one who's got to tackle the Lobs machines up there at the front of this race and really go out there for it. Here's the side-by-side right now. Kenny Latta going at it with Ewan Baker, and behind that, Ben Morris and Michael Whiting out there at the moment. They'll funnel into line as one of the synergy cars there, Ewan Baker, is going to sit now behind Kenneth Latta, hoping for a drive. And you look behind, look at this on the straight. Where do you give your allegiance to? Brett Loxton, because he can push Ben Morris, he can push the likes there of Michael Whiting. He'll do neither. Whiting, uber aggressive on the brakes, takes the place.
Yeah, Ben Morris now trying his best to defend the place from Loxton here. Who, remember, this is where the incident happened between Loxton and Gibbs on lap 1. Loxton's going to stay wide here and make sure not to get into the quarter of Ben Morris to turn him there, but maybe try and get through at Hurry Downs, slowing each other up. This compresses the entire pack, and Zach Rattray White has to lift off in the braking zone to allow Matt Morris through there. Big battles going on here in the midfield. Remember, this fight is for 14th place.
Well, Matt Morris is being so aggressive there. He just took advantage of everybody slowing down and said, I'll take 1 as a freebie, Zach Rattray White. I'll take 2 as a freebie, James Chesterner. And he will move on past and get himself a double there in the midsection of the circuit. So that definitely does free up some confidence where you gain 2 places for not very much out there. But this is what you'll find. It's pack mentality racing here at Road America. The moment that you get stuck in what is essentially a quagmire out there in this race, you get yourself caught up behind a couple drivers out there overall. The gaps start to go and explode, and the rubber band snaps the slipstream at 1.5 seconds, and you look at the gaps, and it's pretty difficult. Brett Loxton throwing it deep on the brakes, sending a message to Ben Morris, but he's in a Morris sandwich right now, and he realises it's Matt that wants his way through.
Yeah, I think the message that Loxton was unintentionally sending to himself was, oh dear, my rear end's not quite with me here. Matt Morris taking advantage of the lack of momentum for the Jinx Shifters 209 and trying up the inside of turn 1. That is a long way to the inside as, oh dear, Ewan Baker going off at turn 1 as a very inconvenient spot. Chastanerve has to lift off there, and that'll allow Morris to get by Baker, and Baker will move through to the outside there to try and get back in line. That's unfortunate there for Ewan. He was right in the midst of it all here, more towards the front of the field. This is what happened to him. So it's the 011 of Logan Barnett who's going up the inside of him here, but Baker just overshoots the braking zone.
Easy to do there on the sudspeed.com replay, and you're looking at trying to gain any sort of advantage. Tyler Blackburn, by the way, is the first real taker down in the pits. He's down by 41 seconds and now looking to try and get himself back going again. Of course, he had the damage. He's been trying to live with that to try and get back further forward. So you get the real sense that if you are going to have an issue at turn 1, it's because you're trying to beat the other driver on the brakes. Didn't quite happen there for Ewan Baker, and as such, he had to fall back, and he'll look at the candlestick maker and go, well, what more can I do when I'm trying to fight on the brakes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That camera's being demolished 7 times over.
And make that 8 as Paul Young makes his way through there. Oh, man, I love that camera angle. It just goes to show how much speed the cars are carrying through the kink, and it's a very treacherous part of the circuit there. Not much in the way of runoff. There's a railway line that runs alongside the circuit there, and so basically on the exit you've got a strip of grass and then the wall to contend with at the highest speed corner on this circuit. Stenberg and Ireland, they've been running together after starting from the pits. Now Stenny is ahead of the man who finished second in split 2. We'll see how far up they can make it, but if they are this far back, unless there's a
Ireland's just gone off there. I was just keeping an eye on it. He very nearly took Kurt Stenberg with him.
Yeah, very nearly indeed. So Ireland's lost some valuable ground there. I was going to say that for Stenberg and Ireland being this far back, they're probably it's probably worth undercutting the rest of the field if there isn't a safety car. Yeah, it looks like he just overshot the braking zone again, pinched the brakes on the way into the final corner. But yeah, drivers further down in the field will be looking to get their first pit stops out of the way earlier and try and set themselves up for a better run to the end, as the Rattray White machine 117 going too deep in turn 1 ended up getting passed by Morris and Chastaneuf.
Yep, and it's still not over live, as you can see on the bottom right of your screen. Now
Whoa,
into perfection. There goes a look from Zach Rattray White, and now all of a sudden it's Matt Morris having to throw the defence there up the hill towards turn 6. It's all sorts of goings on right now for Chastity. Oh, and there's big troubles there. That's Ryan Jones.
Yeah, Ryan Jones and Troy Stonestreet coming together there. They were starting in roughly the same area of the field from memory, and I'm not too sure exactly what's going on between them, but turn 5 at Road America, there's only so many things that can happen down at that location, so we'll see. It looks like Troy Stonestreet slid on his own, we're hearing from Dean in the background, and Ryan Jones made contact with him on the way through. And well, there was some overlap, and I mean, I don't know, looks like Jones had a bit of a slide as well. They just made contact with each other in the end.
Well, they're fighting for the same piece of real estate. If you get the wrong type of front-to-rear contact, that's it. You're going to go around. There's no other way to look at it there. There is now a racing incident called between Gibbs and Brett Loxton there. So I think Loxton's got a little bit lucky out there in terms of his involvement in that incident that we saw on lap 1, because he had 2 bits of contact out there which threw together that incident, and I think it was very tough racing, and sometimes you got to play to the letter of the law, and he is always right on the limit, is Brett Loxton. Now that incident there between Stonestreet and Ryan Jones is under review currently, so we'll see what the stewards do with that, but look at how the gap is slowly eking out here for the 2 Lobs cars at this moment. Half a second to Blake Warboys, and this is the pressure that these drivers will put on. They will put the same lap again and again and again on the board. It's up to Warboys to match, if not surpass, and here's some more side by side.
Yeah, the 307 Fishy car in the midst of a fishy battle, it seems. They're all in a school here, getting split by the Phase 4 Mustang and the Race on Oz Commodore behind. And okay, this is another replay here. Back to lap 1. This is on board with Chris Miller, and we're going to see Robert Gibbs spinning ahead here. This is what it's like when you come up on a car that spins right in front of you.
Oh, you have nowhere to go. You're committed to that inside. You spot the driver on the inside of the circuit and go, I'm safe on the outside. The moment he comes back, you are left stranded, nowhere to go. Speaking of nowhere to go, Zach Rattray White, I think, exploring every extremity of this circuit, throws it back up the inside of James Chastaneuf. He's doing his tyres no good by his off-track excursions. That was contact through at turn 7 between himself and Morris through the corner. Morris giving the hip check through as he went on by, and basically just said, well, if you want to get through, see what you got. And look at the anger. Look at the anger from Zach Rattray White. It's not often that you see headlights flash in a series like this.
Yeah, definitely not. This is another view of what happened on board here with Rattray White, just up the inside and a tap on the exit, and that sent him off into the grass. Well, down to Canada Corner, he's not been able to make up much headway as the big pack continues to make its way around Bill Mitchell Bend, and have a look at how vaulting Zach Rattray White is into these corners here. He wants this move done on Morris, and he wants that Euro Power car out of his sight.
Yep, he wants to get through, and he wants to get through P, D and Q, and he will look to turn 1 to make that happen. Over to the inside, halfway along, fully alongside. Wing mirrors, clip under braking, and Morris has to give it up. But remember, this is a circuit that acts sometimes like a super speedway as Ryan Jones jumps into the pits, because if you make one move, it's not too far away before another one can be made straight back.
Here comes the number 80, meanwhile, Josh Horton, who's here from Split 2, finished in 3rd, and he's solidly in the top 20 at the moment. Could be looking at 19th here if Ewan Baker gives Shasty a nice bump draft on the way down into turn 5. On the way down here, oh, there's so little room to really make your moves here. Oh, there's contact, and Horton's going to be sent wide. That's going to be another couple of positions lost for him. Shokanatake making his way past in the Phoenix Racing team number 86, but Horton's going to try and hold on as best he can. Now he's got Miller and pretty much literally everyone else behind him. Contact again. Mark Poynton sent off the circuit there by Josh Horton. Poynton will get back going, but he'll fall back into the clutches of Stenberg.
Well, Poynton will feel a bit unlucky with that in the Frog Leap juiced car because he had a little bit of netco on that incident, which does happen in sim racing from time to time. It's prediction versus prediction. You're not exactly 100% there, so there was a reality somewhere by Kurt Stenberg hard into the fence as he goes through here at the carousel.
Oh, that was massive. I didn't even really see how that happened. Stenberg, just unfortunate here, racing hard with the 029 of Mark Poynton. He got ahead in the mid-corner, and then Poynton just gave him a tap in the rear at the worst possible time, and Stenberg sent with the rear into the tyre barriers. Doesn't look like much damage from the exterior, and he's back up to speed nicely, but that'll be some cumulative damage on that car. You'll see him just get on the power here to try and get ahead, but then Poynton keeps turning in and just clips Stenberg and sends him around.
Well, the issue for Kurt Stenberg is he's naturally going to oscillate back out onto the line that's there from Poynton. Poynton's always there alongside. They're fighting for the same piece of real estate. And I think Kurt Stenberg thinks the moment he gets half a car alongside, he's entitled to the space. No, he's not. Mark Poynton's still battling out there for it. And as such, I think you look at that and go, well, Kurt Stenberg's going to be in a bit of, unfortunates in there, but Kurt's the sort of driver who does get upset. He's someone who has been here, read the book. He's raced pretty much every SCOPS race that there has been, and he's pretty much seen everything and done everything, so he'll feel like he'll have a good case, and I think there'll be a good case as well out there for Poynton as well, as we see the front four now clear because that gap's starting to open up to Jacob O'Reilly and Dylan Pereira.
Yeah, it's been a good job from Warboys and Leonage to stay in touch with the Lobs duo at the front of the field. Keep our eyes peeled on Kenneth Latter as well. Last spot in the top 10 that Fishy car occupies, and his teammate Whiting will be playing rear gunner here to Logan Barnett, Ben Morris and Brett Loxton, who's a little further back as well. Good run for Latter so far, up 2 spots. But the most positions gained in the field is Jamie Dyke. We didn't see him take part in qualifying, but that Fishy car is up 12 positions into 22nd. Hopefully that momentum continues for the 080. Next highest positions gained being Jay Brazier, and then Matt Morris and Chris Miller on 6 spots up each. But they've certainly had a lot of adventures on their way through to that. So far, not much of a change in this battle, and not much of a change either in the top 4 either. But look at the track temperature, Sperry. It's dropping. It's now down to 38 degrees. There's going to be a bit more grip at hand for these drivers now, and it'll probably give some relief to those who have been overheating their tyres.
Well, you've got to remember, we're in sim time at around 25 past 3 at this moment here. So that means that this track is going to cool the longer that this race goes on. And I reckon it'll be roughly about 3 to 4 degrees from the start of the race to the end of the race is what we're probably looking at here at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. It happens, and these drivers have to think about where they want their car set up. Do they want it quick at the beginning of the race where they've got the hot track temperatures, or do they want it quick at the end of the race with the cooler track temperatures? Joe Mahoney and Michael Angus then make their first stops in this race. We talk about the wide window being important. Look at the face of concentration. It's like watching a statue here on the straight for Rehan. Doesn't move at all, and as he tiptoes it through into the corner, he's just trying to get as much drive as he possibly can, realising that if I was Warboys, or if I was going to be Rehan right now, or even Jacob O'Reilly, who's just fallen off the back of this group, I'd try and get an undercut strategy working. I'd try and make an early stop and try and force the hands of the other drivers around me.
Well, you mentioned the undercut. That might very well happen and be a shorter pit stop for Leonage in the midst of it, because Jay let us know there we don't have audio on the prod feed, but he did note for us mega lift and coast for Rehan Leonage coming into turn 5. So he's definitely saving a bit of fuel behind Warboys, though he's pushing a bit too hard on the exit of the carousel there. So that's the first real sign here of Leonage potentially doing something different to elevate himself further into the top 3, but I think Scott and Rudd still have this race under control for now.
Well, James Scott's going to have to be taking on more fuel at the pit stops. There's no doubts about that. And that's where maybe if they were properly thinking about racing this one outright for James Scott, they would have put Dylan Rudd in front to do the work to start this race and then have James Scott just sit behind and follow. Instead, James likes to lead from the front, so he'll do exactly that, lead from the front of this field, and it does give Dylan Rudd an opportunity. It gives Blake Warboys an opportunity. It gives Rehan Leonage an opportunity out there, and we are in the opportunities of this race. And into the pits, out of this group goes Logan Barnett. This is the highest taker we've seen into the pits so far. The privateer, this is one of the toughest pit lane lines in all of racing, because you've got that uphill braking zone onto the plateau to try and get it slowed down on the limiter.
Yeah, Dean, we'll bring you in for this one as Jamie Dyke comes in as well. He's going to continue his momentum up through the field here with a little bit of an undercut. Now is about the time that we are seeing drivers potentially going for an even split. This is going to be interesting for sure. But if you're up the front, Dean, I reckon you'd want to stay out for a bit longer.
Yeah, I think so, Reese. I mean, when you're at the front, you get to dictate the action, I think, from what's happening behind you, and maybe Dylan Rudd just sort of biding his time, and maybe, I don't know, maybe he could potentially look at overcutting James Scott if he got the pace down, but for now, probably not. You just got to be aware of the threats behind, but I think if you're James Scott, you're going to just stay out as long as possible. Once the tyres start losing you time, that's when you've definitely got to come in and make that change.
Well, now we see on replay a move between Kenneth Latter and Michael Whiting, the two teammates of Fishy Motorsport. Obviously, no team orders here, because Whiting went very deep into turn 5 to try and get the move done on Latter, but ran too deep at the exit, and Kenny decided, okay, now it's time to get up the inside here at turn 6, but sliding his way through, gets the move back.
Yeah, that's a comfortable move there again from Kenneth Latter, who's been moving from strength to strength in these races and has been putting all the building blocks together to get up the order. Nice to see that in terms of moves. There is your front four once again, though, really trying to throw it through. Now, the question is how long, I think, is going to be the real key. How long can you go out there in this race? And there are thoughts about when you want to start diving in, when you want to try and make those pit stops. A little bit of traffic's just dived in the form of Tyler Blackburn for the second time, but you're getting a sense right now is how long do you want to go? Because they have to do 2 mandatory stops, and the fuel is going to be something to keep in mind. They are limited to 90% of the fuel tank here today, so it's going to mean they can't just run as much as they want, but it's going to be all about, look at the second group, they're all in.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting there. Just for the record, I've got a graph in front of me, thanks to Race Control, showing potential possible strategies. The maximum you can stretch a tank is about 18 laps. So it's around about this point, we're going to be seeing the majority of drivers come in, and this is the more sort of even split strategy here. All of that group coming in on the 11th lap of the race, and we should expect them to pit again around about lap 21, unless they fuel save in the middle and or decide to maybe under or overcut or you know, whatever you like to do. There's obviously 3 main strategies you can you can conduct in this race, but there's a lot of room to play with it.
Right, let me ask you a question then. In terms of the rule book right now, you got yourself the opportunity to go as far as 18 laps on a stint. That will leave you to 36 overall if you go through. It's a 31 lap race today. Can you just in the last 5 laps pull into your box, not take fuel, not take tyres, and go back out again?
Probably, yeah. That's something that we've seen go on in supports as well with compulsory pit stops. All that's required is just to come to a stop in your pit box and then get back going again. You don't have to take service. So there's potential that a few drivers are going to try that. Hopefully we get some confirmation on Race Control on whether or not that is allowed, but I'd imagine it would be. Change for position, meanwhile, between Jamie Dyke and James Chastaneuf. Both of these drivers have just come into the pits. Dyke now up 11 spots. Thanks to taking his stop. Basically, everyone in the top 16 right now has not visited the lane yet. As far as we're aware, you have to go up on your jacks, at least, in the pits. Anything more that you want to do is up to you.
Yep, so you've got, might just be the case of just trying to replace 2 tyres and go. It's that sort of scenario that you got. Dylan Pereira then from 7th will jump in. I did want to note in all of the pit window shuffling that we got right there is that Paul Young has fallen back into the clutches of Kenneth Latta, and there goes Kenny down the inside, and that is pretty much there. Perfect. Kenneth Latta in orange right now. Is he in South Park or something?
Yeah, I'm used to him driving a yellow car, but evidently they've left that fishy Mustang out in the sun a little bit too long. So we'll see if he can continue on this run here as pit stops for Pereira, Loxton, Morris and Brown. It looks like Chris Ireland is in as well, starting from the pits. It's interesting to see how long he decided to stay out there, Mr. Ireland. I would have expected him to go for an early pit stop and take advantage of the clear air. For now, Latta continuing to keep Young behind him, and the battle will continue for quite some time to come. These guys currently fighting for 3rd of the cars that have already come into the lane. Now, something happened here between Ben Morris and Chris Miller down at turn 5. There's the pass that happened between Dyke and Chastity up ahead, but Miller turning in for turn 5, and there was a tiny bit of overlap, but nah, not enough, and around he went.
Well, you can see he jumps on the brakes immediately to redress that position. It's a long, long hole because you've got to get that car flick spun around, letting all the traffic go through at that point. So that's a massive, massive redress there, and that'll be to avoid the penalty out there. It's an honour-based system that you see quite often in these Australian touring cars, in the likes of this style of racing, is that if you have a mistake, if you let the place go back, that honour is going to be there, and that's just been noted by race control that the contact between those 2 drivers has been redressed.
All right, so if there is to be a penalty applied for that, it will be minimised thanks to the position redress there. All right, we move on through almost into the latter half of the race here. And Latta continuing to put some good times down here. Now Michael Whiting has dispatched Paul Young too, and they all pitted at the same time. Evidently the fishy car's a bit more comfortable on those fresh tyres. Race control deeming no further action necessary thanks to Ben Morris redressing the position on Chris Miller. Keeping an eye on the front 4 now. Scott and Rudd, you know, usually in more sort of sprint style races, we see them jetting away, but I get the feeling that they're driving a bit conservatively here to save fuel themselves. Maybe in the last few laps of the race, once they've gotten their final pit stops down, we'll see the true pace of these Lobs Esports Commodores unleashed.
Well, I wouldn't bank on that for the moment. I think there's been some wonderful driving by Blake Warboys and Rehan Leonage, who have both kept themselves in this race, who have both kept themselves with an opportunity, and they have seen the drivers behind, like Andre Youssef, like Jacob O'Reilly, like Dylan Pereira, fall off the back of this group because simply they could not handle the pace. And right now, if you are too hot for the heat, you must get out of the kitchen, and you've got 4 very fantastic fry cooks at the front.
Yeah, they're cooking up a storm up the front here. Let Blake Warboys cook, because he's got the draft that he needs on Dylan Rudd. He can afford to lift and coast a little bit, save that tiny bit of fuel to shorten his pit stops here. But now that the majority of the field have come in, everyone from Dylan Pereira down, we wait to see what this front 11, decide to do. Is there any move by the Lobs cars into the pits? No. And there's nothing from Warboys or Leonage either. They're probably aiming to do roughly the same thing that Scott and Rudd are doing, but I think especially for the second pit stop, you would want to try something different.
Well, you kind of have to. Of course, if you're going to do the same thing, it's about execution. And here in iRacing, the pit stops are pretty similar out there. It's about usage, which I think becomes important. Now, Andre Youssef has dived into the pits. So too now has Josh Horton and Zach Rattray White gone into the pits as well. So you've got those drivers who've decided they want to pull in. Now, those drivers who pitted early had the fresh set of boots, will be able to undercut by a number of laps, but we'll see how much time they're going to lose as they go through. And keep an eye out in the the pits as well, as there's a warning for an unsafe rejoin there for Baker out there in the number 34 car. So you and Baker keeping an eye out on that. But I would say keep an eye out for those drivers having a small pivot in through the pit and pivoting to the left-hand side as they pull into their box, because they want the shortest route out of pit lane that they possibly can.
Rattray, White, Horton and Poynton all coming into the lane there, and the pit stops are a little bit longer than I expected there. Pit stops that we've seen from a lot of the drivers have been running around the 11 to 12 second bracket. 10.7 seconds for Jamie Dyke, quickest pit stop that I can see so far. But the drivers that just came in, around 13 seconds spent in the lane. Poynton been in there for quite some time, 18.6 seconds. So that tells me either there's been an issue for Poynton, or much like I'm presuming the other two drivers that were in the pits then did, they're looking to extend this second stint and maybe have a little bit more of a margin to play with for the final pit stop to the end.
Well, that's something they're keeping in mind. I'd just like to point out that I think Blake Warboys needs to pit in the next 2 laps, I would say. That gap now at 0.7 of a second. He's at risk of losing the slipstream in its entirety, and if he's clever, he'll jump, but at the moment, he's going to stay out because he still feels he'll gain enough of an advantage on the straight. But the moment they go outside a second, he's got to come in and make that stop. He's got to make that decision, because now we're seeing the screw start to be turned here on this 15th lap. Now we're seeing the troubles. Jake O'Reilly's familiar car jumps into the pits then, so this will force the chain reaction.
Yeah, it definitely will, at least from Baker and Kanatake, the cars behind him. So we'll see how much of an undercut Jacob O'Reilly will really get on these drivers. Remember, 18 laps is the maximum you can really get out of that 90% restricted fuel tank. So it's rapidly approaching crunch time. We're going to be seeing the 15th lap of the race completed very shortly. And that'll only allow a margin of about 3 laps for the drivers to make their pit stop, and 1 lap can make all the difference in this series. Chris Coxhead and Andre Youssef, well, they now move up into second and third of the cars that have pitted, and Youssef going for a big move on Coxhead there at turn 1. Got it done nicely, as O'Reilly will come out in 14th place. That is stop. Effective 7th. Very long stop indeed. 22
and a half seconds in the lane. Jacob O'Reilly goes behind Paul Youngs, behind Brett Loxton, behind Michael Whiting, behind Kenneth Latter. And when you're in 5th position, that's pretty much going to hold things on in this situation. Andre Youssef's jump. Dylan Pereira now becomes the main challenger for these front 4. Now, those drivers in the front 4 aren't necessarily going to know how bad that stop was behind, so they might react anyway to that knowledge knowing. But if they are keeping themselves alert right now, Blake Warboys has got John Van Ree, for example, in his ear right now. He'll be thinking about, well, what do I have to do to move forward and gain a little bit of a knowledge and understanding? And that's what maybe Blake's got. It'll be quite interesting to see what the Lobs team has in terms of their HQ, giving them an understanding of what is going on in this race and do they need to respond. 1, 2, 3, in comes Blake Warboys.
There we go. That's what we wanted him to do there. Has to try something different. Has to try and get the undercut. But he would have been hoping that there would have been someone else coming in with him there. I'm wondering if this is going to work out for him. Yeah, he will get the undercut, but he stands a chance of coming out in traffic. Maybe he was waiting so long for the chance for clear air. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But Leonage is well out of slipstream range now of Scott and Rudd. These are the drivers that Warboys may very well be fighting with, depending on how long his pit stop goes. Whiting has made his way past Kenneth Latter. Warboys will fall behind Baker and Kanatake, who have yet to come into the lane. Dylan Pereira in the number 61, meanwhile, he's got 20 seconds or so to make up to Warboys, whose pit stop is complete at 13 seconds, and he is going to come out solidly in clear air. That's exactly what he wanted, but he's going to come under pressure instantly here from Pereira.
Well, Pereira needed a couple more laps and he would have been in the wheelhouse there with those drivers as Andre Youssef sets the fastest lap then of the race, just ahead of Chris Coxhead. So that was an important stop there in the context of the race by Blake Warboys, and now he's just got to push because he knows that Scott and Rudd and Leonage both know. Leonage is the one who's really lost out by the Blake Warboys decision because he got effectively snipped off of the draft there by 1.4. It was something where Rayhan probably had to go and commit with Blake Warboys in order to keep some slipstream and keep in the context of this race. Very difficult to make that decision on the fly. You have a split-second decision to make that choice.
Yep, and in those split-second decisions, it's 50-50. It either goes your way or it doesn't, and the dice is then rolled. So, the Lobs Esports drivers saw Blake Warboys coming in behind them on the previous lap, and now they'll have decided whether or not they're going to go for another lap or respond instantly. Let's see if the undercut is responded to. In comes James Scott, but Rudd is going to stay out, and look at that. I think that's smart there from Leonage following Scott in.
Well, I tell you what, it's very smart by the Lobs team there. They've covered both bases on this strategy. James Scott, the big threat to win this race, who has won 7 of 8 races so far this season, has to dive into the pits, and the reason why is he's got to cover the threat by Warboys. What they can now do is have Dylan Rudd go very long, very aggressive on this strategy with the fuel, and because of that, Dylan Rudd will have possibly the shortest stop of anybody out there. Blake Warboys making his way now through turn 14, and in the boxes they both are up on the jacks, looking to get service, dropping themselves down through and looking for that runaway. Warboys cresting the rise now is going to be up to speed, but will James Scott be? Will James Scott be up to speed as he goes through? Now he goes through, and look at the difference makers in that stop. James Scott has increased by 2 seconds, overcutting the strategy.
Yeah, that's really good stuff from James Scott. Also had a 2 second longer pit stop. 2 seconds shorter pit stop than Warboys, sorry. So that means that he's going to be spending a little more time at a standstill when it's time for stop 2. But I think the gap that he has over Warboys now is more than enough for him to keep it. Meanwhile, Leonage with a long stop, 14 seconds. He's fallen behind his teammate Pereira.
Well, Pereira's just got out of the way as there is Sho Kanatake in 3rd position, so moves being made, but these drivers going out as long as they can. We're on lap 17. They can't go much longer out there on their strategy, so you got Rudd, then Baker, then Kanatake, then James Scott back out there in 4th position, not really having to worry about too much. So I am very much alert to the fact that Dylan Rudd's going to need a nice stop here as he goes through, and these two drivers right now out there together, they're probably going to be the last of the cycle, trying to work out where do they need to be in the long context of this race.
Yeah, Baker and Kanatake here, they are the trailblazers here for the super long first stint, along with Dylan Rudd, as we get a 10-second penalty for Mark Poynton for the contact that we saw with Kurt Stenberg back on lap 7. That's a big shame between those two drivers. It was the incident that we caught live in the carousel with Stenny being swung around when trying to stay up the inside of Poynton. So Dylan Rudd has come into the lane. Will Baker and Kanatake follow him in? No, they won't. Baker and Kanatake, they are just running the tank dry in this first stint. It's going to be some benefit to them in the final part of the race. They will have a shorter final pit stop and be able to keep their tyres nice and fresh, but I wonder if they've given up too much time staying out this long.
That's an underfuel then by James Scott to get the track position. But look at that, it's Blake Warboy.
Oh.
Straight through on Dylan Rudd. So he has gained from the pit stop and he's jumped up into second. That's a big move in this one. Dylan Rudd got caught out a lap too long. And on top of that, James Scott on the underfuel now has himself about, I would say, a 3-second margin in this one from 2 seconds worth of pit stop, less fuel out there. We'll see how that goes. They hit the brakes. Watch out a bit further back. Brett Loxton finding himself a little bit caught up here with the recovering Jacob O'Reilly after his monster long stop.
Yeah, O'Reilly's going to be hard on the aggression here, trying to make up places. He'll poke the nose out on the way up to 5. Hard on the brakes alongside Loxton, ahead at the turn-in point. How hard is Loxton going to fight this? Not hard enough. A little bit of a slide on the exit, and O'Reilly will get back up into 11th spot. But you got to wonder, if things had gone different for him at the first stop, where would he be? He'd be easily competing in the top 5 here. Maybe even top 4 trying to go for the podium. Such a shame that we lost O'Reilly from that battle, but there's still chances for him to come back. We haven't seen a safety car yet.
Very much haven't, and of course there are whispers in the wind for someone like Reese to say there, but you know, a safety car is just that. You can't predict them, and as such, there goes the lunge from Dylan Rudd straight down the inside of Blake Warboys. No arguments there, Blake knowing he was beat along the kettle bottoms, and just like that, it's Blake Warboys back in third. It's Dylan Rudd now making sure it is 1-2 once again sorted, and in finally comes Ewan Baker and Sho Kanatake.
Yep. 18 laps, the maximum distance you can ideally make on a fuel tank. They'll move on through, and I'll see where they end up coming out. They won't have to put as much fuel in as everyone else has. This will be a shorter pit stop for Baker and Kanatake, probably around 10 seconds or so. That's the amount of time it takes to change all 4 tyres on one of these cars. But interesting to see that Kanatake has been stopped now for upwards of 16, 17 seconds. That is a bit too long, I think. And I don't know if he sped on the way into pit lane or what, but that is way too long. Ewan Baker having a more conventional pit stop time of 13 seconds. So 23 seconds in the end for Kanatake, who will come out in 20th spot, as Mark Poynton is the first car to come in for his second stop.
Well, of course, he's got that 10-second penalty as well, which he's looking at this moment in time with not too much happy further at this point. So he'll be thinking about that, an extra 10 seconds. And, well, for Mark Poynton, you know, not exactly what the doctor ordered there. Scott Clear with the fastest lap did a 6.4 on that last time through. By contrast, Blake Warboys getting overtaken a 2:07.5 over the course of that run, and that 2:07.5 would have been with the overtake. Rehan Leonage, by comparison, did a 6.7, which was about 0.8 quicker on that last lap. So you got the sense that Rehan here is trying to reel this group back through after his pit stop didn't quite go as planned, and this is where the natural talent will come in from a driver like Rehan at this point, Reese, because he will love to chase, and he will chase all day long.
They will indeed. Dean, we've certainly been familiar with Rehan Leonage over time. He's one of the best out there over a single lap, and he races as hard as anyone does, as Sperry pointed out. What are you expecting here in the second pit stop cycle?
Yeah, well, I think that's where the hot lapping sort of comes into good use. I think obviously he did a good quali lap to get himself up the grid to start, but then yeah, once the race got going, he sort of dropped back. So maybe the experience isn't quite there for the racecraft and playing the long game. But we did see him saving fuel as well. So maybe he's proving me wrong already, but I guess we'll have to find out. I think for him, he's just got to put in some good laps now, not lose the group in front, and then can look to mount an attack towards the end of the race.
Yeah, well, we'll see now as we have more cars coming in for their second visits to pit lane. Chris Coxhead being one of them in car 208 and only just coming up now to his box. Matt Morris also coming in for his second stop. They're doing a bit of a longer stint to the end here. Angus, Kirby and Brazier all making their way in as well. 2 fishy cars plus Brazier there. So, yeah, wow. Yeah, the back of the field is absolutely coming alive with pit stops here. It looks like Ben Morris and Troy Stonestreet have made their way in too. Coxhead's just come back out in 24th place, but remember that everyone ahead of him has yet to make their stop. So Coxhead's good to the end. He is the leader of the cars that have completed their pit stop requirement.
He certainly is at this point, and so when you've got drivers who have made all their requirements, have got everything sorted, and now looking to go forward with what they've got, this is going to be where the second half of this race comes into fruition. It's been wonderful after the pit stops from James Scott and Dylan Rudd. They are now the quickest 2 drivers out there on circuit, and I think it's not just about that start, it's about being given that opportunity and then finding what they need out there on circuit to go and pull everything together. It's very tough to stop them when they get into a rhythm, and the way that they've covered both moves off, I think they've both found a rhythm that they're happy now. Keep an eye on this group right now, because this is a massive train which is behind Jacob O'Reilly, who's now got through everyone in this group. So that's Brett Loxton, Michael Whiting, Kenneth Latter, Paul Young, and Zach Rattray-White.
Yeah, this is a really good run from Jacob O'Reilly that we've seen there. Meanwhile, Chris Miller catching up to Chris Coxhead catching up to Chris Miller. I'm getting my Chris's crossed there as Dylan Pereira is going to jump into the pits in the number 61 here. Once again, first driver from inside the top 10 to really go for it. Oh, yeah. Was that...
Oh, that's given Paul Young the black flag.
Oh, it
has.
He's
been caught for speeding because of the push there on the back by Zach Rattray-White in the pits.
Oh no, that's got a sting there for Paul Young. On board instantly with Rattray-White, overshooting the entry into pit lane and just gives Young a little bump there. That's a little bit too much extra speed that he's got, and iRacing automatically gives him a black flag for exceeding pit speed limit on the entry. How would you feel if you're in Paul Young's position? Remember how good Young was going? He had 9th place in qualifying. He was on for potentially a top 10, and now that's all going to come to naught.
It absolutely will come to naught, and Paul Young's naturally over the radio sounded so deflated at the fact that he had that happen. He's just had the black flag penalty cleared, but I think it's a little bit too late for him in terms of what's gone on right now, because he's still having to serve it and with the fuel and everything else, and so that will pretty much be that for Paul Young's race. He will drop miles back down the order, and he will be furious.
Yeah, certainly will. I'm sure there's going to be a little chat with Zach Rattray-White after this race. Well, we'll keep an eye on Jacob O'Reilly here as he's now up into 6th spot. And out of the pits comes Paul Young after a absolutely horrendous second pit stop. 53.6 seconds stopped in the lane there for him. So, O'Reilly has yet to come in for his second stop. Everyone ahead of Dylan Pereira in 11th still has yet to come in for their second stop. It looks like Kurt Stenberg is the only real outlier here, down in 17th place. He still has to take his second stop. But O'Reilly now having to try and focus on getting all these positions back after spending twice as long in the box as anyone else there on the first cycle.
Yeah, so definitely trying to move forward, gain what he can here, Jacob O'Reilly. But you look at the gap to Andre Youssef, he's got about 7 seconds that he's got to try and claw back in with Brett Loxton in tow, who's up a gain of 7 at the moment in this race. Jacob O'Reilly will be looking at that pit stop thinking, what on earth did I do wrong compared to everybody else? I think he was looking at that, really putting the fuel tank back into place and trying to go forward and thinking, no, that's not exactly what I was hoping for. Now, here's Jamie Dyke back here in 19th position. He's got James Chasanoff and Kurt Stenberg for a little bit of company here at this point as he looks to charge forward. The bar car is looking to raise said bar, and the Mustang's going to gallop up the hill against the Holden.
Yeah, beautiful run from Jay Chasanoff out of the final corner there, and he will pass Stenberg for 17th place just before they get across the line. The Banter Alliance Mustang will hold strong as here comes Jamie Dyke to get past Stenberg as well. Remember, both of them are only just fresh out of the pits. They've only completed their first lap after their second stop. Stenberg is on 13-lap old tyres at the moment, and I would imagine they're screaming for some mercy.
I reckon they are as well. I don't think he's a million miles away from coming in and making a pit stop at this phase of the race. So we will be seeing those drivers looking around, those on differing strategies that will meld together at the end of this race with 10 laps to go. Here at Road America, there's a car off in front of them. That's going to be Logan Barnett, who's going to drop the entire group at this stage.
Oh, Stenny has to get on the brakes early, though. He won't be able to get past Barnett at this stage. That's a shame there for Barnett. He was only fresh out of the pits himself. It seems he made a mistake coming down into turn 5. Remember the heights that Barnett was reaching earlier on in the night? He topped the first group of qualifying, and unfortunately, doesn't look like he'll finish any higher than maybe 15th place at this stage. Andre Youssef, meanwhile, for Vermilion Esports, coming in from 5th place. He's followed in by O'Reilly and Loxton. Now, this is Jake O'Reilly's chance here to make up some ground. Only 8 laps completed on that stint for the 222, and it should be a nice short stop to get him to the end.
Yep, so just the 8 laps on the stint. That is a case of, I want to pit in with the cars in front, so I know exactly what I've got to work with going forward. There is Dyke once again, hoping to try and get himself through on Chasteneuf, but now running through turn 13 and heading towards that turn 14. The fishy car is looking pretty snappy at this moment, trying to find a way through, but again, it's going to be all about this drive out of 14 and up the hill. This is where we see the majority of moves being pulled through, and now getting on the power, looking for that chance to make the pass, and we'll see here moving over to the right-hand side. Chasteneuf defends. All the drivers that were in the pits have come out and away ahead of these drivers there. Chasteneuf enough on the defence, so Loxton's now the car in front of them, and then in front of that, O'Reilly is about 4 seconds away from Yusuf, but crucially behind Chris Coxhead.
Yeah, Chris Coxhead having an excellent run here today and managing to keep himself in the top 10. O'Reilly's pit stop was the quickest we've seen all night so far, along with Matt Morris. Both Morris and O'Reilly, 9.8 seconds stopped in the lane. That is tyres and just enough fuel to get to the end, I would imagine.
I would imagine that is exactly what has just gone about. And now here comes another little look there. That is going to be a lot going on right now, and these two are going to be throwing it out together. It looks like they've been busy over this. It's Christopher Ireland and David Kirby up and under. They go in the bottom right-hand corner. This is what happened into turn 1. So here we go, all the way to the pit wall, trying to get the move sorted. A bit of contact in the bottom right corner of the screen, but in through turn 1, around the outside, and Ireland just sticks the nose in and says, you know what, I've still got brakes, and he
with Ireland still recovering, still managing to keep it going forward, but a huge slide for him there. There was contact in between them. Meanwhile, James Scott has just complete extra fuel that he didn't put in on the first stop, but crucially still comes out well ahead of Leonage and Warboys.
Well, Warboys had a really long stop there, and that's allowed Leonage to go through. Leonage is clear, and now Warboys is stuck behind Sho Kanatake out there for position. So it's a disaster for Blake Warboys on that second and final stop. You talk about having to be so crucial with what you need to do. The greatest drivers in the world are the best on the in-lap, the pit stop, and the out-lap. And Kanatake, straight back through on the inside. Oh, this is huge. He's battling for his teammate.
Yeah, he's trying to keep Warboys from making up as much time as possible here, trying to give the benefit to Leonage, who will still be in effective third place now. And I think the gap's big enough that now Kanatake's job is done there. Dylan Rudd, meanwhile, only 7 laps to be completed here on this stint, but will he go for a short stop to go for the run to the end? This will be very interesting here for Dylan. He's going to come in now. Yep, nice short stop.
Well, if Dylan Rudd gets this right, he could leapfrog here, and he is going to try everything. You are just at 71 kilometres, 70 to 71 kilometres now on the straight. James Scott currently in third, only Ewan Baker in front to deal with for him at this point, but Scott right now is trying to break away from Rehan Leonage, who is going to be his main challenge in the second half of this race, depending on how good this driver's stop is. Dylan Rudd, who will pull for the the third to last box, the tri-ultimate box in his run through. He will go up on the jacks, and now it's about James Scott and where he comes out in comparison. There on the bottom of your screen is Rehan Leonage, who is now cresting up the hill. This is long. He'll finally pull out, so Scott's going to go through, but will Rehan now jump through as well? Rehan's coming along at a pace of knots here. They're going to conjoin, but just in front. That's perfect from Dylan Rudd.
Yeah, perfect cover off there. He moved right to the racing line, and looked to me like Leonage wouldn't have gotten him anyway, but still, widen the entry into turn 1, get yourself straight back in the rhythm. Now the challenge is on Leonage to pass Rudd. Second pit stop, meanwhile, for Joshua Horton in the number 80, 14.3 seconds stop there. That's another reasonably long stop that we've seen, and now we only have one car left in the field that hasn't taken their their second stop, and that's Ewan Baker in the number 34, out in the lead at the moment. But have a look at how close our top three still are. Scott managed to get a good run through the whole pit cycle there. It's still on between Rudd and Leonage. Question is now, the gloves are off. You know how much fuel you have. You know you can make it to the end. I think Dylan Rudd's going to absolutely fly from here.
Well, Dylan Rudd, I think, has got another job to play here, and that is, under all costs, keep Rehan Leonage behind, because if Rehan can find his way through, he can start looking to try and attack James Scott in this race. Yes, tyres do make a difference here in these final stages of the race, but the one thing we're probably looking at, which is the most crucial thing to keep in mind, is that these drivers are hungry for results, and we are soon about to see it. And the moment that those two start getting a little bit difficult with each other, Blake Warboys is going to want to be on the scene and finding moves out there as quickly as possible. Keep an eye on the battle further back. This one right now, where you've got Chris Coxhead in the middle of Andre Youssef and Jacob O'Reilly.
This is a great battle here for 8th place. Coxhead trying his best to hold on here. He's the car on the oldest tyres in this battle pack. Youssef and O'Reilly, remember, pitted on the same lap there for Vermilion Esports as Ewan Baker goes into the pit lane. It'll be interesting to see where he comes out. Started in 8th spot, and James Scott immediately throwing the hammer down. New fastest lap there from the 088 at the front of the field. Shokan Atake also coming in once again, it looks like. So let's see what the pit stop is like for Baker as Coxhead continues to chase down Andre Youssef here and go for the move up the inside into turn 1. Youssef saw him coming and ran wide there, be able to get the exit off the curb, and he'll immediately cover here. Now Coxhead will move to the outside. That opens it up here for Zach Rattray White, and he'll try his best to get it through here. Sorry, no, not Rattray White, Jacob O'Reilly. Rattray White is a long way behind here. I'm not too sure why Rattray White's showing up on the overlays there, but in any case, it's going to be 3 cars into 1 on the way into turn 5. Can Chris Coxhead hold on to a position in the top 7 here? Gives a little bump to O'Reilly on the way through turn 5. No opportunity for the over-under there.
That was really cheeky from Chris Coxhead. He drifted over about a car length and a half to try and apply the pressure on the door of Jacob O'Reilly to secure that position. He's using every trick in the book to find that pass, and he's not going to be making friends the way he's driving like that. Jacob O'Reilly is going to remember that and go through, and there is a black flag for contact for Zach Rattray White with Paul Young. It is going to be there a huge bit of issues out there, and he has got himself that sorted for pit entry.
Yeah, that was when he tapped Paul Young in the rear on the way into the pit lane and gave Young that black flag. Young has since retired from the race. He's been in the pits now for the last 6 minutes there, so it looks like race control reviewed all of that and thought, okay, Zach, you were a bit too aggressive into the lane there. That is worthy of a penalty. So Zach Rattray White has had a bit of a tough night here. Remember how he had all of that trouble getting a lap down in qualifying? Well, he was in the top 10 and ultimately won't be finishing anywhere near that.
No, he won't be. And for Zach Rattray White, who was running about there in 11th position, which would have been 10th with Shokan Atake's pit stop, it's a big dent in what he's hoping for in this race, and I would say deservedly so with what has been going on. Now, Dylan Rudd here is just about pulling this gap down. It's now down to 1.5 seconds, and I don't think James Scott is 100% safe in the final 5 laps of this race, because if Dylan Rudd can get himself along, he might have a chance to battle his teammate for the win, and I'm not sure what the team order's perspective is at Lobs Esports.
I don't think there is any, honestly. Considering what James Scott was saying at the and Andrew Gilliam as well was saying at the end of the round at Sonoma. Replay on the bottom, I think, of the no, that's live between Chris Coxhead and Jacob O'Reilly again. O'Reilly this time moves ahead round the outside of turn 5. Good move, but can Coxhead fight back? Let's see. Good exit and a little bit of a twitch there from O'Reilly on the exit, and he'll have to yield into Hurry Downs. Coxhead doesn't want to give this one up.
Oh, Chris Coxhead is driving with every single bit of defensive prowess he can muster up. At this point, you can see the rear disc brakes glowing in the back of those machineries as they now start to charge. 1, 2, and 3, split by 2.8 seconds out there at the moment. James Scott being reeled in hand over fist. It's now 1.3, and now Dylan Rudd will start to feel the effects of the slipstream here over the course of this stage. James Scott's got to turn the wick up late, and I wonder how much he's going to be ruining the fact that he's been leading this race pretty much the entire way, has James Scott, by net position. Dylan Rudd might just throw in late an opportunity, but they can't afford to jeopardise each other's races with Rehan sitting behind, thinking, you know what, you two battle, come together, I'll pick up the scraps.
Yeah, that's what Rayan will be hoping for here. Dylan Rudd made up 4/10 on James Scott on the last lap to add to the 3/10 he made up on the lap previous. This battle's still going on between O'Reilly and Coxhead. In the meantime, Andre Youssef has driven away from this fight. You can clearly tell that Coxhead is the slower car of this group, and O'Reilly flings it up the inside at turn 1, but he's too deep, and Coxhead will make him contact in the rear, sending O'Reilly off the racetrack there. But you get the feeling with the trajectory he was going to be in the gravel trap anyway.
Oh, he threw it in. He was desperate to get it turned in, but he was just a little bit late to it, and Chris Coxhead had to turn at some point and ultimately couldn't get it slowed up enough to make sure that he was up and through. So contact between the two. The stewards are going to have a look at it, but ultimately there, I don't think there's much in that. As we take a look with the Sud Speed replay, you can see he throws it down the inside, and Chris Coxhead, you know, he's trying to get it slowed up. He's trying to get through the corner, but O'Reilly is so far into the corner, there's not really much that Chris Coxhead can do in that situation. There again, Chasseneuve defends on that inside line, and again, Jamie Dyke is bottled up.
Yeah, Jamie is up 21 places at the moment and looking for a potential position in the top 12 here. Seems that Loxton and Latter are too far ahead for him to make any meaningful difference to them, but man, what a fight this has been. What a drive up through the field. Can he get it done, or will the likes of Logan Barnett have something to say about that? Remember, these guys all pitted at the exact same time for their second pit stop, and we'll have to wait and see if any of them have been preserving their tyres a bit better. I'll call that race control decision at some point once Jay decides it's good enough to put on the overlays. But yeah, in any case, we'll keep our eyes peeled on this battle. 4 laps to go, coming up to 3. And Dylan Rudd's continuing to make up time on James Scott. The gap for the lead is now within a second. It was another 2/10, 3/10 even, that was made up there for Dylan Rudd. The contact between O'Reilly and Coxhead at turn 1, no surprise, Sperry, no further action.
No surprises there at all, but at the front of the field, I think that's where all the surprise is going to be. Leonage is unable to keep the pace of Dylan Rudd, and it is now Scott versus Rudd to see if Dylan Rudd can pick up his first win of the season. At 0.8 of a second, he is trying to claw that gap back down, and he was gaining 2 to 3/10 without necessarily needing the slipstream to help with James Scott. Now he pulls that into 0.7 of a second up the hill, and James Scott here, I think, might just have to be looking back in the mirrors, thinking, well, if Dylan Rudd wants it, he's going to go out there and attack. Super aggressive then, entering the hurry downs, and suddenly James Scott is going to be looking defensive. And how often this season have we seen this?
Barely any. I don't think I've seen a single race this season where James Scott has looked as under threat as this one. So these last 2 laps are likely to be a classic. Get comfortable, get a snack, get a drink, and settle in. This is going to be a big show indeed. Can James Scott hold off the advance of Dylan Rudd, who has just a single lap's worth of undercut on him on the tyres here? But, as I said before, 1 lap can make all the difference, especially around a track as long as this one. You would often think Road America, with its long straights, wouldn't be that hard on tyres, but look at how hard they're pushing. Look at how much force is being put through the tyres at the turns when they come to them. It tends to eat them up, does this classic circuit. And Wisconsin, is that's a slight mistake from James Scott on the exit of the final turn. He knows that he's in trouble.
Well, it's half a second now, and with 2 laps to go, you look around and you think, Dylan Rudd, what can you do to go and find this move, to find this one place that is needed to gain up into the race lead in this late stage? Every single time he's hitting one of these straights, he's gaining an extra 1/10 of a second. He's now down to 4.5 tenths of a second going through turn 3, and James Scott is needing drive, and Dylan Rudd knows that it's not just about now if he can make the move, but when as well. Timing is going to be so important with a couple laps to go, and as he sits down at 4/10 of a second and just thinks and salivates over this move on the brakes into turn 5, he's got him set.
Yep, within a car length now is Dylan Rudd of James Scott. We shall see if the two teammates battle each other hard here. Scott, he's under no pressure in terms of the championship. Even if Rudd wins, he's more than 1,000 points in hand, which is worth about 4 rounds worth of points, so interestingly enough. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see if that ends up blowing up like we're expecting it to. Meanwhile, the 111 of Ryan Jones fighting with Ben Morris here over 24th place. Still battles going on all throughout the field, no matter what position you're in. So, man, the amount of time that Dylan Rudd made up on James Scott on the previous lap. Get this, 5/10 of a second, half a second gained, and James Scott will be feeling the pressure more than ever, but he's used to being under pressure as he's worked his way up through the ranks in this series. Now he is the top dog. Now he'll see if he can play a bit of a sponge game and soak this pressure up.
Wise, how much does he want to push? And the one person that you know more than anybody else in races like this is your teammate. There is no ifs, there is no buts, there is no ands. Look over to Barney the flagman, because we are hitting the white flag lap, which is being waved right now. Scott versus Rudd. Hold on to your hat. Rudd at 4/10 of a second, trying to close this gap down. He knows where the best place to make a move is. It's going to be into turn 5. There is no doubt about it. That's where he's going to want to make that move, because he knows if he gives 4 more corners to James Scott, he'll find a way to hold. Now in through turn 3, this is where the opportunity opens up. Dylan Rudd needs a run, and at 3/10 of a second, I reckon he's got one if he wants to throw it in. Now James Scott realises I'm in a little bit of trouble here. I might have to find my blocking boots. And now Dylan Rudd closing, looking for a chance. It's not there. Down the hill into turn 5. Where is the chance going to be? Is it Canada Corner, maybe?
I think so. Canada Corner probably going to be the opportunity for Rudd to make his way through. Small correction, it's 480 points for a V8SCOPS round win, but that still means that James Scott is 2.5 rounds roughly in hand here. So even if this position changes, Scott will still lead the championship, but he'll want the glory. He'll want the win here at Road America. Rudd has been searching desperately for great success here. He's missed out on the race win since joining Lobs Esports. He's had so much potential since joining this team. He is equal on pace with James Scott at the moment at this round. He's got so much to play for here. Good run through the kink, a little bit too far in the grass. Can he get the slipstream? Can he get the run up the inside at Canada Corner? Scott will see him coming and go defensive. No, he'll allow Dylan Rudd potentially to take the inside, but it's not going to happen. Is there going to be anything happening at the final corner? One mistaken Bill Mitchell bend can set yourself up here. But James Scott will hold strong, and Dylan Rudd won't pressure him for the win here. What a fantastic run it was for the 990, but it's going to be a photo finish between the Lobs Esports drivers here. 1-2, lock it in. Fantastic result for James Scott and Dylan Rudd. Your top 2 for round 9 of V8SCOPS. Rayan Leonage in 3rd place. What a fantastic drive there from the number 79. Couldn't quite back up his qualifying performance, but still, he absorbed the pressure like a sponge himself.
Oh, he did. He did a wonderful job. This is close, though. Heading over to the line, Andre Yusuf is just going to hold off Chris Coxhead here for result, and it is getting busy further back because Ewan Baker has just gone off the road there and has had to let Morris and Barnett and Dyke all through. Ewan Baker gets on the radio. They've been very busy in that group on the final lap. 2 calls to race control in the last lap of the race, which just goes to show you how hard they were battling for those positions, and we're still going to get some up the hill.
Yep, that's the number 86 of Shokan Atake, who's going to just get Joshua Horton at the line. Oh, barely anything in between those two. Fantastic finish. Michael Angus right in the midst of all of that, as well as David Kirby is going to lose out. Oh, right before the line there on Ben Morris. Oh, dearie me. Kirby will still be happy, up 4 positions from where he started. And Miller, who's had plenty of dramas here tonight, almost stands a chance of getting past William Brown, but he'll have to settle for 28th position in the end. Last 2 cars to come across the line will be Kurt Stenberg and Tyler Blackburn. Blackburn, of course, with that heavy damage earlier. He is a couple of laps down, and Stenberg still carrying the damage from his incident with Mark Poynton earlier. He's just having fun at the moment, drifting around to the final lap. And the 2 Commodores will cross the line together to round out our field. 32 cars seeing the checkered flag in the end of the 34 that started the race. And that will be that for V8SCOPS round 9. James Scott and Dylan Rudd. Once again, Lobs Esports untouchable in those top 2 positions. Rehan Leonage managing to get it done on Blake Warboys in the pit cycle. Still a mystery as to where that 15.8 seconds second stop came from for Warboys. Pereira will round out the top 5 with Yusuf and Coxhead not separated by much in the end, just a couple of tenths. O'Reilly, Whiting and Latter rounding out the top 10.
A little bit further back then down through the field, Brett Loxton would pick up that 11th place finish with James Chastenerth in 12th. Jamie Dyke, what a drive from him, 34th to 13th in the end for his race. Really, really solid performance with Logan Barnett in 14th and Matt Morris in P15. Ewan Baker would be shuffled out late into 16th as Shokan Atake would defeat Joshua Horton heading over towards the line by about half a tenth of a second there, so getting that all sorted. Zach Rattray White, we saw get the penalty late on. He'd fall back to 19th. He was up as high as 10th in that race after his contact with Paul Young, and then rounding out the top 20 would be Michael Angus, looking like he wanted a result today.
Yeah, same for Christopher Ireland, who, after starting from the pits and having plenty of dramas, finishes exactly where he qualified in 21st place. Jay Brazier up 10 positions. He'll be happy with that run, with Ben Morris losing 6 spots, just beating David Kirby to the line. Ryan Jones finishing on his lonesome in 25th place ahead of a 4-car pack of Mahoney, Brown, Miller and Stone Street. Poynton, Stenberg and Blackburn your last finishers there, with Paul Young and Robbie Gibbs both retiring from the race. Big shame for those 2 drivers, but now we will see the potential interviews from the drivers here. We have yet to see any of the drivers show up for a chat with us. Hopefully we'll get them soon, but just reflecting on that race, Sperry, man, what a fight it was.
Yeah, it was a strong fight here from the front 4, who all gave something in this race to try and put the result together that they believed was going to get themselves what they wanted. I think it was a tough fought race out there where all the drivers had to push basically to the end of this race, but there were 2 very decisive moments in that race which pretty much put things together. Blake Warboy's long second stop took him out of contention when he looked like he was going to be the closest challenger, and as well, you've got to keep an eye out on what happened to Rehan in that first stop when Blake Warboys went for the undercut. I think if Rehan had jumped in with Blake, he would have had a better opportunity in this one to get the result that he wanted, but hats off to the Lobs drivers. They both proved today why they are 1 and 2 with those results.
Yeah, indeed, and we're going to speak to the one of that 1-2 at the moment, James Scott, back on top once again after losing out to Brody Kostecki at Sonoma. Once again, your finishing record in this series, almost insurmountable, James, but Dylan was putting the pressure on you there in the final stint.
Yeah, no, it was a good race. Obviously, this track's almost similar to Monza, in I like, with the amount of drafting that goes on here. So yeah, I had to, obviously, leading the first stint, I had to try and do something a little bit different. So I just sort of followed what everyone else did. I've probably would have ended up back and forth and having to fight my way through. So had to probably pit earlier than ideally I would have liked, but it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, indeed. Coming away from this round, of course, Road America, very popular circuit among the drivers. You guys voted it into action in this season, but Road Atlanta being the next round and the final regular round of the season before Enduros. Obviously, you guys are going to be working hard on the setup for that place where riding the curbs is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Used to be one of my best tracks, but the last couple of times I've driven there, I've just missed the mark a little bit with the setup. So, but I'm sure the team's working really well together, and we seem to have made the car a fair bit better since last time I was there. So, should be able to get something that's a little bit more in the window.
Excellent stuff. That's number 29 in terms of wins for you, James. We got it done for you.
Yep, obviously shout out to all the guys at Lobs Esports. We've really moved the car forward this year, which is awesome to see, considering we've had this current car for a little while now, and it's really hard to find those improvements, but we seem to be able to keep chipping away and making it a little bit faster, which is great. And obviously we couldn't do without our sponsors as well, doing okay. Ryko Performance, Hybrid Racing Simulations, you guys for the broadcast, and obviously Dylan on P2's awesome for the team, and well done to Rehan as well for third spot.
Well, James Scott with a magnificent victory here at Road America with the 1-2 for Lobs Esports. Jake Sperry's caught up with the number 2 in the battle, second place for Dylan Rudd.
Dylan, today looked like for you that you were starting to show exactly what it means to be a Lobs Esports driver here in Scops. You were right up there at the front, basically playing wingman to James Scott for the majority of that race. Talk us through your first stint and what made that stint important with everyone close together and keeping yourself tucked in underneath of that championship leader, James Scott.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Just fuel saving in the first stint. There's no point trying to battle or anything in the first stint. Just save as much fuel as you can to help in the last stop, to have a shortest stop as possible.
So talk us through then all of the different strategies that are out there, because it looked like everyone was going to try and make that jump to undercut you behind. Then James jumps in behind you. You decide to stay out longer, and you were consistently overcutting everybody else in terms of the strategy. How much is there talk between you and James over the course of that race, and how much of it is you looking to try and get as much as possible out of this one when you can charge forward into that final stage of the race where you look like you were pulling James back there quite quickly?
Yeah, just thought I'd do something different. So yeah, I knew James was going in, so I just thought do something different, go one lap extra. So I knew I had a bit more fuel in hand from fuel saving the first stint, so that was pretty much the only reason for going extra lap.
And so just talk us through the end there. Of course, you got Road Atlanta that's coming up next time we're here with Scops, but just talk us through then towards the end. It looked like you closed that into 3/4 tenths. How much of that was I was going for victory, and how much of that was form finish for the team?
Once I got to 4 tenths, I pretty much used up the tyre, pushing pretty hard to get there. And with the aero wash and being on the same setup, it makes it pretty hard to pass. So yeah, I was pretty much, once I got to James, my tyres were over by then.
So that is all there for you. The floor is yours. Anybody like to thank Dylan? It's P2 today here at Road America.
I'd just like to thank all the guys at Lobs, our sponsors, Doing Okay, HRS, Ryko, and thanks to you guys for rotating and all that.
No worries at all there. Dylan Rudd joining us second place overall. Now, Reece, just before we move over to our next driver, I've just got word in from the stewards that there is a post-race redress in for the 080 machine. That is Jamie Dyke with the 34 car of Ewan Baker. So that will drop Jamie Dyke back to 16th position. It will promote Logan Barnett, Matt Morris, and Ewan Baker up the order.
All right, big decision there from Race Control, but we'll move on from that and up the field to Rehan Leonage in the number 79. Congratulations, Rehan. Another podium on the board for you at Road America. You were in the midst of the fight the whole way through there, both Blake and Dylan.
Yeah, it was a very good battle. I think first it was mostly just about finding the fit. I think he made a little mistake and Blake got past, which is a good strategy call from him. And then first stop, we fell back a bit but put a bit more fuel, so then that meant second stop we were pulled right back.
Yeah, and battling it to the very end. Obviously, your dad, Laz, is in your ear, helping you out with the race strategy calls. You two making, obviously, a very good team with another podium on the board today.
Without that, I'd be nothing with the strategy. So, another podium, which is good. I don't think I've had one this year so far with the very intense competition, but glad to be back up there.
And what about Road Atlanta coming up in a few weeks' time? A track that many drivers enjoy, and I know I certainly do. It's going to be a tough one once again before we get into the Enduros.
I think, it'll definitely be a tough one. I think it'll make for some more good racing and good strategy stuff as well. I enjoy the track mostly, but yeah, I reckon it should be fun.
Yeah, certainly will be. Is there anyone else you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go, Rayan?
I'd like to thank Hybrid Racing Simulations, Melbourne Hydrographic Stepper, Prestige Cinematography, RMX Australia, DHF Tyres, RSW Graphics, Bubbles and Balloons, and Phoenix Driver Development. I do the coaching and Dad does the setups for things like this. And I'd like to thank Race Control, obviously. There are a decent amount of incidents out there today, and all the league organisers and you guys, the commentators, and good race to the top two guys.
That's Rehan Leonage's 7th career V8SCOPS podium, and he did it in style. Fantastic stuff there. We'll let Rehan debrief with his dad, Laz. Big shout out to Lasset Leonage for helping out his son there with the race calling. Well, Sperry, we're going to move to Road Atlanta for the 10th and final regular round of the season before we get into the Enduros. We'll be waiting a while, though. Sunday, the 29th of September, but it's going to be a fun time indeed. I love Road Atlanta.
Well, it's going to be a long time, and I think that's important for those drivers who have looked around and have seen James Scott win 7 of the first 8 races, now 8 of the first 9 races. They look at round 10, and if they don't want this series to be a total whitewash in the hands of him, you've just got to sit down and put about 5 weeks worth of practice down in on the board to make Road Atlanta work. It's the last stop, of course, before Enduros get into play, so it's the last individual opportunity, some would say, to go and get this championship sorted before you run into that Enduro run to end the season outright, to give all of these drivers that race to Mount Panorama. And I think we're going to be in for a treat here at Road Atlanta, a circuit that is effectively a cauldron when you get to racing in this machinery. It has all of the hallmarks of what makes a great racing track in V8SCOPS.
Yeah, we hope that you can all join us for that. Mark the date in your calendar, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern on the 29th of September. Of course, we'll have supports action on the Friday night beforehand as well. Big thanks to everyone for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed the show today. I know we certainly did up here in the comms box. Big thanks to Dean Hunt as well. He's had to go off now, but we appreciate him jumping in for Split 2 and helping us out with some of the pit strategy talk here in Split 1, and also of course to the administration team at Aussie Online Gaming and all associated sponsors for helping to put this show together in the first place. We're SimSpeed TV. I'm Reese Gardner, Jake Sperry with me in the comms box, and Jay Kennedy handling everything behind the scenes. From all of us here, we say bye for now, but certainly not forever. We'll see you in a month's time.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.